My next guest is a Norfolk native. He is the Senior Research Assistant at Atmospheric and Environmental Research. Chase, thanks for making time to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Zach.
No problem. I'm Zach Miller with my co-host Anita Larson.
Hi, nice to meet you, Chase.
Thanks for having me.
And we are touching base with Chase Calkins today. So Chase, thanks for coming on, man. I've been talking about it for a few weeks and now we're here.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Norfolk.
I did.
Originally. Went to Norfolk Senior High.
Correct.
How was that experience for you?
That was pretty good. I was graduated, towards one of the top in my class. I did sports, did football.
Yep, played together.
I did. I don't know if the Norfolk High recognizes, speech and debate as an activity or if it's considered a sport now. Otherwise, I did track. Didn't make it, to state for that. But otherwise, Steve Porter had this, special list of like throwers that reached milestones of like throwing 50 feet for a shot or over 140 feet or 160 feet for discus. And so I'm on, those lists.
That's awesome. I think speech and debate was considered at least an activity. It might have been a sport.
I think it was an activity in our hometown.
I can't remember. But
yeah.
you were pretty good at that, though.
Yeah, I was. Because when I was sophomore, I think it's called novice debate. And so what that is, like each year you basically get, one policy. And I think when I did it was, it had to do something with the environment. And I can't remember exactly what the statement was. I remember, we were one of the top novice teams in the state. We ended up going to the state, and at halftime we were rated number 2. And of course we go against the number 3 team, and we ended up losing that third round. Then you go into the fourth round, and we also lost that round. Otherwise, after that, then it was basically called Congress. And so you basically go in,
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
You basically create a whole bunch of different, let's say, bills, and you basically it's kind of like, the government. You basically go.
You explain how you get people to vote on it type of thing?
Basically go, you was like, here's my bill, and here's why you should vote for it. Majority of the time, I would basically be kind of like what is called a presiding officer. It's basically like the judge. If you get nominated as presiding officer, you get this cool little gavel. So I have like one of those for, I think, a couple of the debate teams.
That's awesome. So can you explain how they, I never really understood how they scored the debate. Like the debate team stuff.
It's not through, like one-on-one. So like the students, there's like different referees that are in there sitting around and scoring, how's this person talking? How, comprehensive or intelligent is the bill? Usually the presiding officer is usually always like one of the top people because he has to, keep everyone in line. So usually he's always up for consideration. But as far as then even like the novice debate, there's the one judge that's, sitting there and scoring, and you have like usually have, I think, you have the main affirmative and the deference. And then your other partner goes for the affirmative and then deference, and then you basically do some sort of like rebuttal that says,
gotcha.
These persons, aren't really caring about this, and let's say for the defense is like, we don't really care about that, that's
right.
We've shown studies that, this doesn't really matter. And then it comes up to the judge, basically says, which team really kind of convinced me more to say go with the affirmative or, the negative.
That's kind of cool.
Pled their case better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's basically it.
So I forget at what position you did graduate in, because you were pretty high, right? I forget.
I got on the GPA scale. Ooh.
Yeah, like because you were pretty high up there, if I remember right. Or was there like I don't even remember who our valedictorian was. So you don't either.
Nope.
That's okay. You were high up there. I remember you were smart. You were a smart guy. So where did you end up going to college then after that?
So I got a football and track scholarship up to Dakota State, and it's not South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. Dakota State is NAIA football.
Okay.
And so I went there on, those scholarships, and I didn't really, I specifically go up there just to basically kind of do track because I really love doing the shot put and discus.
So you went for sports?
I went for sports.
Okay.
So yeah, they gave me, I don't know how many $100 just
right.
to do the sports. I actually had, kind of a scholarship down to Kearney, and the coach really wanted me to go down there, but, my father really kind of pushed me not to go down to Kearney because, you can't spell it wrong without you. Okay. It was that huge conversation. It's like, I really don't want you to do that. I really think you can be like a 2-sport athlete up at Dakota State.
If everybody wants to know, I went to Kearney, so that's But yeah, so you went for the sports, not for any kind of, you weren't going there for a specific degree at that time?
At that time, I was actually enrolled in actuarial sciences. And so basically actuarial sciences is basically just doing a whole lot of math for fun.
You loved math, huh?
I did.
Yeah. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Psychopath.
Because I think
hey, I almost became a math teacher too. I like math. I'm not good at it, but I liked it.
Yeah, because I think actuarial sciences basically kind of has to do with insurance. So let's say basically you have to kind of like
an actuary.
Yeah. That's the way it is. The actuary.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if I would have, finished going through that, did a couple of tests, that's easily, that's a 6-figure job.
Right.
But, I kind of went in there. I was like, I just get really tired of doing all the math. And, the sports weren't really working out because I did football and, being on the team. Because, I started as a freshman because, my very first game, I started against, a Division II team. And we had done, 2 games already. And, the third game was, Division II. And there's a huge difference between, talent level between, an NAIA football team and going against,
right.
Person from Division II, but otherwise, I held my ground. And I love telling the story because, we go down, I think it was Southeast Missouri State, and we stayed at a hotel, and we ended up losing the game. For the first half, we were doing fairly good. We lose the game. The coach says, how proud he is, and then, one of the assistants comes and he says, hold it right there, coach. I want to introduce you to this bill that we got from the hotel. He's like, what do you mean a bill from the hotel? Well, it seems like some of our players here kind of took some things from the hotel.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, people were stealing like pillow sheets.
Oh my gosh.
Covers. It was just insane. And so the coach came unglued at that point.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so it was a long ride back. And I remember getting out the bus. It's like, bring your running shoes on Monday, boys.
My gosh.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so then he had, the weekend to settle down. It's only people that, did it kind of got punished. And so they had to do laundry for the entire, for the rest of the football year.
So how long did you stay there then?
I was there for 3 semesters, I believe.
Oh, so not too long.
Right. So yeah, I did the fall semester, which was the football. The spring year, I did shot put, discus, hammer, and weight. And at the time when I was a freshman, I held the hammer record, the weight record. And I was I think I had the freshman records for the shot put and discuses. But, they didn't really have a coach up there. It was basically some just old guy that came in.
For track?
For track. Well, because nobody went up there for throws. It was more kind of a cross country track team. It wasn't more of a field team. So my coach was just some random guy that volunteered his time to come up there and look at me.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, I'm not really getting anything out of this. And at the point, I basically kind of says, I don't want to do all this math anymore. So I was like, maybe I'll go into teaching. And I think I did teaching classes for 2 weeks. I was like, I can't teach people.
Not for you either.
Yeah, you can try to just do it with my daughter's like, hey, look how easy it is. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, it's super simple. Come on, we can figure this out.
Right.
And so then I decided to go down to the University of Nebraska and get my bachelor's down there. And, I met my advisor. I said, I didn't want to do, all the math up there anymore. I wanted to come down here and do meteorology. I was like, well, you know what, that's really stupid because now you got to do all the math that you would have done up there. Now, plus all the meteorology was like, super. That was a real good decision, Chase.
Oh, nice.
You said University of Nebraska. Was that Lincoln?
Lincoln, yeah.
Lincoln, okay.
So what made you decide to go into meteorology then?
I mean, the thing that I always look back on is, the movie Twister, with Bill Paxton. I think there's supposed to be a movie coming out.
That movie used to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, anytime that comes on, I love just sitting down here with my daughter and trying to do that, And, you basically go to school. It's like, I really want to be, one of these guys on the movie film. Like go out and chase tornadoes, go look for hail. But, you kind of don't have the money to do all the gas and replacing the windshield every, couple of days because hail went through it. Actually, at the very end of my career for my bachelor's, I did an internship at the National Weather Service down in Valley, Nebraska.
Okay.
They specifically brought me on for a tornado event that went through, I forget the town, but the tornado event went through the office and it just hailed a bunch of the people there. They had their back of the windshields blown out. The plastic grill for like my Equinox at the time, that was destroyed. They totaled my Equinox.
Wow.
My wife was kind of disappointed in me. It's like, I should have, taken my Jeep, my old high school Jeep.
Right.
The vehicle that I shouldn't have like really cared about. But she's like, I don't really know if it's going to make it to Valley and back. But we'll take the good car. And so then I show her the pictures. I drive back, air's coming through like little tiny holes in the windshield. Like,
oh my gosh.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I thought, they'd be able to like replace some of the panels because, they were trying to do like paintless dent repair at that time. And the guy comes out and looks like, he's like, yeah, we're not going to do this. Like everything inside, all the internals, it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
But everything on the outside, I had to be replaced. So they're like, yeah, it's not worth it.
Too much.
So meteorology, Twister. So that obviously drove you to that major.
Yeah.
How'd that go at UNL then?
I ended up being the vice president of the meteorology club.
Nice.
When I ended up graduating. And so, yeah, there's only like a handful of people that usually end up making it through these programs because, you have like the easy 200 level course for like introduction to meteorology.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get like the one that's on steroids that basically goes through like in depth, like, the physics of like the raindrop falling through the atmosphere. Calculating like the terminal velocity for like all that stuff. And so like those equations are super fun to kind of do. And there was like the dynamic meteorology, which isn't really my strong suit. It was more like the physical meteorology and synoptic weather meteorology, which is kind of what my master's research was on.
What's the difference between those two, physical and dynamic?
Physical has to do like a physical like property. So like if I were to like look at, let's say light and like how it's reflecting off of stuff. Whereas dynamic is basically how motion of the atmosphere.
Okay. That's kind of cool. So that's not your strong suit though?
No,
Okay.
not doing all those super fun dynamic equations.
They don't sound fun.
Yeah, everything down there is like, IDL based, which is a programming language. And, it was kind of bad where, you're doing like all these classes and they're like, all right, do this, program in IDL. And so then, since I was such a quick learner at programming, I would do this and then I would hand it to the instructor me like, is this how it's supposed to be? And most of the time I was like, I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I was like, well, then I don't know what really the point is here if I'm already outpacing the instructor.
Yeah.
That's not good.
When you decided to go into meteorology, did you know like what you wanted to do with it at that point in time? Or did you just go in with a mentality of like, because obviously there's a weatherman, there's a whole different like piece of areas that you can plug into it. Did you know where you wanted to plug in or just go through the classes and then figure it out?
Well, at that point, besides doing, going out and being, like a tornado chase or something like that, it was my dream to go do work at the National Weather Service. That's why I did my internship there. But then trying to like get a job with the National Weather Service, it's kind of hard with just only the bachelor's degree. Basically kind of requires either a military service to basically give you the extra points or a master's or some sort of like higher degree. And so when I would put in for these positions, there's different locations. The one that I almost got hired for was Pueblo, Colorado. The reason I didn't get hired for there is because like, oh, you didn't say that you were going to be doing some like research. It's like, well, this is an entry level job. I didn't realize I needed to have like a research idea in mind for me to get this job.
Well, you had to have like a specific area you wanted to study or what?
Just like some sort of like topic that, if I get hired, I would think about, studying about hail or, some sort of like updraft.
Is that a requirement for most positions there then, or
No, I think they just kind of wanted like some sort of
you to have an idea?
What to bring to the team. Because normally when you do like stuff like the National Weather Service, most of the people there are just, they go in and forecast. And so you're cooperating with different, surrounding areas. So like there's one in Valley, they would coordinate with like Des Moines or Hastings and Sioux Falls. I think those are the 3 closest ones for us.
So you said you had your bachelor's at that time, but you got your master's though, right?
Yeah, I ended up getting my master's.
So between getting your bachelor's and your how many how much time in between there?
Let's
you go right away or?
Let's see. I think I took a year off between my master's because I thought, I was trying to get the job. Well, I didn't get the master's, but yeah, it wasn't proving too easy. So yeah, you had to, even for you to do the master's, you had to take a specific test that they call it the GRE. And it's math, imagine that, and then a bunch of English. And so like you have to figure out like vocabulary. It was kind of just like ridiculous. It was like, oh, can you tell me what the definition of like flag is? And like you have to figure out like which part definition of flag are they talking about? Like instead of, like a regular flag, it'd be like, oh, a third definition of like a flag. It's like,
so what, I guess, do they need that for writing papers or was like, why was that a English requirement for that?
Yeah, it's kind of more like research based, so like way that if you do, we want to do like proposals, because that's basically what grad school is. You go in, you do a whole bunch of research. You have to do some sort of like master's thesis. PhD does like a dissertation, which is even harder, for the master's. My advisor at that time, he was pushing me to end up doing my PhD. He wanted me to move my family from, Lincoln, Nebraska. He wanted me to go out to Iowa City and do chemical engineering and do my PhD. I was like, I already did the one paper with you. I don't really have time to be out here for like another 10 years and do another 3 research papers with you to do all this stuff. So I was like, I'll take my chances and see if I can finally get a job.
Okay, so you get your master's. What did you do your dissertation on? What was your?
It was one of the articles here. Basically, it's about sulfur dioxide and basically the North China Plain.
Okay.
And basically, you're using different reanalysis with, like NCEP. They basically have, geopotential heights, temperature, relative humidity, and you try to find some sort of link between like high SO2 events. And
so that paper in there was your dissertation?
That's my master's research that is published.
Huh. I didn't realize that. I thought you did that afterwards.
No, that was.
We'll get into that in a little bit.
So obviously, like high school was pretty easy for you. College was pretty easy since you were kind of outmaneuvering or outdoing some of the professors. Masters, same way. Pretty easy, or did it have other?
There was one class that my master's really struggling. I knew the professor. I knew it wasn't going to be the easiest. And so I was like, I'm gonna leave this one off my MOC because like I heard like all the horror stories and how it can be. Is like I'm just gonna leave it off. So I ended up taking this class because I wanted to learn radar meteorology. And like one of the studies I had to do is basically you take time away from your family and you went on like Easter break, and he put his like research ahead of like other people. So he wanted to study like wakes behind like a wind farm. And I was like, well, I don't really care about that because since I do a lot of like small scale stuff like dust and stuff like that. So I was like, it's like, what can we do with this? And he's like, you basically kind of see like insects being, up in the updraft as, the storm is like sucking up the insects. I was like, well, okay. So I'm going through the data and I was like, we didn't really get any good data at all. So I had to take the Doppler on wheels. They basically rent these different machines from other universities or projects because like we only had it for that time. I think we had it for like a week. And so then I'd take it out to some lake down in Lincoln And so like at that time it's not, raining, it's not doing anything. It's clear skies and you're out in the middle of the lake. People are fishing and they're like, what is this machine that's, right next to the lake as I'm trying to fish? And so, it's leveling itself, it's gearing on, and so I was like, I'm looking for like my biological scatters. So I'm looking for birds really. And so you basically try to like stimulate the birds to basically kind of like go inside, like the path of the radar. And so like as you get back and you go through like all the different variables, like the correlation coefficient and stuff like that. And you try to like, okay, here's this like 1 pixel here. This might be a bird that's like in frame of the radar at that time. And it was terrible. And like I remember he gave like a C out, and so I don't even know if he really even read it because like it's not done anything. I'm sure he just like kind of looked at it as like, oh, there's a C. That's probably what it was.
So that was your most difficult class?
Yeah, that was
ever.
I guess even
challenging. I guess
for like college, high school, I did Miss Henry's research composition.
Oh, dude, I don't want to talk about it. That was the one class that almost made me not be able to play football senior year.
Did you have to take it twice?
No.
Oh, I took it twice.
Oh, you took it twice?
So it was worse for me.
It was worse for you.
Yeah, because basically I think it was like 90% of like the final was your
paper.
Your paper.
Yeah.
And so I remember doing.
That's so funny.
I remember doing the paper on like stem cell research, and I thought it was just great. And I get it back, and she just like destroyed it. As like like this idea of like stem cell research is just like a bunch of like hodgepodge ideas. It's like, and so like it like really like tore me down. I was like, ugh, like I really can't like have this be on like my like final report as being like this giant F.
It's kind of funny. I was so into taking like higher classes senior year and junior year. Actually, I had her twice because I took her English class before I took her comp class. Yeah, this is nothing bad against Miss Henry.
Oh yeah, Miss
she's a great teacher and she does a good job. But boy, will she tear your work apart.
Yeah, really. When you kind of go back and think about it, Miss Henry is, since I do a whole bunch of like research, really her being, part of my life has really contributed towards, my work, since I do all this, different research, different published papers.
She challenged you to the max.
Yeah, she was a great teacher. So anyway, so I know that was kind of a tangent on that, but that's kind of cool that we have that in common. I didn't take it twice though. I took my C and got out of there.
We'll just take this and go.
So where were we? Now I'll never forget where we were at. We were at what were we talking about? This is the first time this has ever happened to me.
We were just wrapping up his master's.
Oh, your master's. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so originally I was actually supposed to go to China as a fellowship or like a visiting kind of scholar.
At the end of your master's or
towards the end of my master's, they wanted to send me out to China, go to, I can't remember if it was Beijing or Chengdu University, go out there for a year and, learn about, chemical transport and, satellites. But then, like the day before I got to turn in like all that paperwork, I find out that at that time I had my daughter. I was like, so then I go into my professor's like, I can't submit this. Basically when I'm supposed to be out there is supposed to be when I'm having my daughter. I was like, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it.
Why China?
I think because he's from China. My professor, Jun Wong. And so, yeah, he wanted me to pursue going out there for just like a year or so, doing studies out there.
Gotcha.
When did you and your wife get married?
We got married 2012.
I'm trying to think. So you would have been, would you have been done with your schooling by then? Probably not.
Yeah, I got my bachelor's, I think, in 11.
So you weren't done with your master's, though, yeah?
No, master's I just started because I think I started my master's January of 12. We got married in April 2012, and I got my master's in 16.
So that was kind of a crazy thing that you couldn't go do that with having your daughter on the way.
Yeah, it was actually easier for me to remember the day that we actually started dating. And actually just remember when our actually anniversary is, because like It's actually a football reference because it was like December 2nd of 2006, the day Nebraska lost to Oklahoma in a Big 12 championship game. Because I remember going down to the game and just like Nebraska just getting beat. It was like, that game was cold down there in Kansas City. It was like, I got to go back home and deal with this.
Yeah.
So after your master's, what was your path after that then?
After a master's, I couldn't find a job. I was actually had to start working at Shopco.
Oh.
And I was...
and you were still in Lincoln at this time?
I was still in Lincoln, working at Shopco, and I was also doing FedEx in the morning. I was doing like FedEx from like 5 a.m. to like 8 a.m. and then working at like Shopco from like 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m.
Were you loading trucks at FedEx? Is that what you're doing? Or?
I was a sorter.
Oh, okay.
So like Lincoln was such a big enough place that it actually needed, a lot of people. So like they would have, there's like 3 or 4 people on like each door. There'd be like 6 doors like unloading. And there's like a couple of people up in the tower, and they had like 3 different belts. And so, one set of people throw it down like belt 100, and then there's another people that sit down 300. There's a 600, and then all the rest of the boxes come down to me. And so that I'm pushing off boxes for like even, odd. And then in Lincoln, they have a special service at that time. I don't know if it's still around. Was like home delivery services.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically just FedEx trucks that would go to just regular neighborhoods instead of like going to like businesses like Walmart.
Right.
And so I would throw boxes off for like those people and pull it off for myself.
So you have your master's degree, and now you're working 2 jobs trying to find a job.
Yeah. And so then I remember coming out here, and I interviewed for an environmental scientist for, I forget the company that's up north.
Ooh. I don't know. Up north. Close to town?
Yeah, it's just on the outside of town up here. By Victory. Because it's not Norfolk Iron Metal, it's the one.
Oh, Nucor?
Is that Nucor?
Yeah, Nucor's out north town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I interviewed for that, and I remember, I got the rejection letter, and I was just, at that point I was just kind of really depressed because it's like, I can't even get back to Norfolk. And so then, my wife was.
You were really wanting to get back here?
Well, because it was like, I've been nice to get back, there, but, I wasn't. It was one of the like rare opportunities that I had to get back to Norfolk
and be in the
environmental area,
right.
at least.
Right.
And so then, I didn't get the job. My wife hops on. She's like, here's a job for like a senior staff scientist for atmospheric and environmental science. And so I was so mad that I didn't get the job. I just used an old cover letter for like another company. I didn't even change it to basically dedicated towards like AER. I remember it had like the old company on the cover letter.
Really?
It did. And like, it's like I sent it like at like 8 o'clock at night, and then like 9 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from like one of the guys off at Air Force Base, and it was like, do you want this job? I was like, hell yeah, I want that job. And so, yeah, they brought me down there. They basically gave me a tour of Alpha Air Force Base, basically go through like all the areas, talk through all the different people, walk me around. I was like, are you sure you still want to do this? I was like, yeah, I really don't have really anything else to go. I remember, after I got that job, since I was still applying to all these different places, there's the Yuma Proving Grounds. There's, I think, the Army's version of like the National Weather Service. Yep. They contacted me as like, hey, we did this interview like 4 months ago, and do you want the job? I was like, well, you were supposed to let me know like 2 weeks after I did the interview that you're going to give me this job. So like, 4 months is a little late.
That's the government for you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I stuck it with AER, and I've been there ever since. What is it? 2017, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was June of 17 is when I got hired.
That's crazy. So obviously we kind of talked about coming back to Norfolk. So at that time you're still in Lincoln when you got the job?
Yeah. And so, yeah, then, I got the job. I'm traveling back and forth between Lincoln and going to Alpha Air Force Base. And, you basically
every day?
At the beginning, yeah, it was basically every day. So, you spend like the hour going there and the hour coming back. And, since, it's really hard for me to like shut my brain off, during that time, it's just basically, it's the open road. And so like if I ever had such a difficult question or some sort of like problem with, my programming, since that's basically like 99% of my job, it's basically, like just coding in my brain and thinking of like ways of how things would work. And, you basically come home after you're working and you try it out and it's like, hey, it's great. And so, after a while, I think it was like a year that I had working there. Because when you're off at Air Force Base, you don't get to use the government internet. Like they don't have Wi-Fi.
Right.
Everything is all landlines.
Right. There's reasons for that.
Yeah. And so AER would purchase like their own like little mobile hotspot. And I think, they would get like 2 gigabits for a month. And so like I would go through that in like a day.
Probably not even a day.
And so, because I'm going through and just downloading a whole bunch of data and coding, going through different websites and going through all that. And it's like, I'm downloading and doing all this stuff here at Air Force Base. Varus is paying for this Wi-Fi. And I was like, kind of concerned, should I start staying home? And I was like, yeah, you've worked here for like a year now. So I think you can go home and you can start, doing more work from home kind of stuff. So yeah, this was before, the pandemic, COVID-19. So I've been able to work from home, way before that.
Right. So
yeah, because the main company AER, they're based out of Lexington, Massachusetts. So basically kind of like Boston.
Right. So what was the final decision on being able to come back to Norfolk then? Or how, walk us through that process, or why you wanted to anyway.
Oh, it was, again, I did not want to come back. And my wife wanted to come back.
Oh, you didn't want to come back?
I didn't want to come back.
Okay.
But we basically kind of made a joint decision to make my wife happy. And, and, since, family is really important to her and everything, she has, Emery has, cousins and all, both of her grandparents were up here in Norfolk. So it was like, spend time with grandparents.
Yep.
So that way she can be closer to family, because, it got really kind of difficult to, say, okay, this weekend, let's go home to Norfolk and go see my mom, or let's go home and see, my wife's parents, or see my dad.
Right.
And so you're basically trying to like plan, seeing, so you're coordinating, try to visit all the family, and,
in a weekend.
Yeah, basically on the weekend. So you're basically, it's like, oh, we saw these guys, X amount of times, and, you're trying to divvy it up. It's like, oh, you've seen, Layla's family, a couple more times, and you need to spend more time with, my side. I was like, this is just getting really, really kind of tiring. So I was like, let's just try to do that. And so, her work, she had been there for about 10 years, and they finally decided to let her work from home. So she has an office inside the house. My office is my couch, real professional.
Right.
So it's a little bit easier to balance time with family members this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big word on the podcast is balance. So
yeah. My mother actually lives like a block over, so I can hop over there whenever I want to.
Nice.
Did you help her scoop her driveway?
No. Oh. Yeah, she actually had surgery on her foot like a month ago. And so I since, I was so bad out, the last couple of days, I didn't get a chance to make it over there and do anything, maybe because, I still got, try to work and then try to scoop my driveway just to even get out, and then try to make it over there.
Yep.
Right. Just so everybody knows, we are recording this on the 9th of January. So this was the day after the big snow. So this will be coming out in about a week. So just want to make sure everybody knows we're going to talk about next week.
My bad.
You're good. So coming back, have you seen the city change since you were younger? Like leaving, coming back in a good way, a bad way? Norfolk?
I guess to me, it seems like it's just kind of like gone downhill, because it like nothing has really changed, I guess, like for me, because like I know like the mall has like really deteriorated. You drive through the parking lot, it's just terrible. It's just like potholes everywhere. I think they kind of like done some like patchwork on it.
They did some asphalt work, yeah.
Yeah, they brought in these like 2 new stores. So what, Kohl's and
I believe
TJ
Maxx, and then they got Anytime Planet Fitness.
Yeah, so because I used to work at Imperial Palace.
Yep, I remember that.
And so I spent, basically all my high school there working for Ken Mudd and Imperial Palace.
He still owns that, right?
No, he sold that and he moved out to Wayne.
Oh, okay.
It was probably when we were seniors.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, okay. That's my bad.
Yeah, because then Cody bought it, and Cody just recently moved away because they got new owners now. He moved out to Georgia.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So there's new owners now?
Yeah, it's new owners now.
I didn't realize that.
But yeah, I mean, like the mall doesn't really have anything. Because I remember before, like the mall was like the hot spot to be. Like,
When we were younger, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I remember, working in the food court. It was just, busy all the time. Sunday, people get done with church. That thing was just filled. That would take up your entire day from like 12 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And now I go in there, it's just, it's just dead.
Right.
They just have a hard time, I think, getting anything into there. Because what? I left in 2006. It's 24 now. The town's like we're really growing by like 5,000 people. I think industry wise, like there really hasn't been any growth. Like there hasn't been any new companies. Like sure, we've gotten a couple like new restaurants. Like yeah, there's like Perkins. The downtown has really bloomed. It's a lot better than what it was. Like because I remember driving up and down Main.
Right.
As your teens, you got those cool little lights that you put on your car.
Right. Subsystems, yeah. Yeah, I guess you're probably right. Industry. We've had Nucor forever. We've had Norfolk Metal for a long time.
There's Goodyear. I did Goodyear for a while.
They've been here for a long time. Continental now.
No, it's
something else.
It was Goodyear, then it was Vance, and then now it's Continental. Yeah.
Then we got Covidian. I'm trying to think of. We don't have too many other big industry. They were trying to bring in another hose or something. I don't remember.
That was supposed to be some sort of like ethanol plant.
Was it an ethanol plant? Okay. I couldn't remember. If it was another hose place, kind of like Goodyear, if it was going to be ethanol plant. But yeah, you're right. I kind of never thought about it that way. That's a new perspective that the city really hasn't really grown a whole lot since you left in 06, and 5,000 is not too many. That means a lot of people are. I think that was one of the big proponents of what Josh was trying to get people to stay. To a lot of people graduate and leave and don't come back.
Right.
Like you did.
Yeah. Because like, I'm in Lincoln, and, Lincoln has, a lot more, availability. So like if I wanted to go, let's say to a zoo, if I wanted to go see a movie, specific doctor that was more specialized, instead of saying, I got to go to Columbus, or I got to now make a trip to Omaha or Lincoln.
Right.
Yeah. I'm already there.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you are in Lincoln, you're only 40 minutes from Omaha too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying. I can see that. I think we're trying to get there, but it's going to take a while to get to that point.
Do you think there's a big gap in some certain area in Norfolk that we could need?
Like as a type of service?
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Like what were some of the biggest things and best things that you did in Lincoln that maybe Norfolk doesn't have? Or maybe it was just not, you just focused on school. Norfolk, it's growing. We'll see.
A lot of people I see, like what she's trying to get to is like Norfolk, we have a lot of restaurants and bars.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of extracurriculars.
Well, I even remember, they were trying to build the go-kart races. Yeah. And that didn't, take off because I think one of the main reasons was, they didn't think Norfolk was big enough to sustain.
Well, funding kind of, from what I saw, I think funding kind of fell through.
Yeah, because I thought like the investors wanted it to be somewhere else. I thought they wanted it to be in like Grand Island because it was going to be bigger attraction, get more of the state to come into it instead of like Norfolk, Nebraska. It's like what am I going to come to Norfolk, Nebraska for? I was like people are thinking of coming to Norfolk, Nebraska for like the weekend for something.
Right.
I mean, sure there's supposed to be the new whitewater rafting, but as far as like amenities, like nobody's really coming here for specific.
Not from farther distances. Yeah. We do house, I think sometimes people forget we do house like our community cities, Madison, Battle Creek, Pierce, Stanton, but those are only so big too. They come here for their stuff, whereas sometimes people in Norfolk leave to Lincoln, Omaha, Sioux City. So I get what you're trying to say.
Yes. My wife does love the golf out here. She
there's a lot of golf. There's golf. I'm not good at golfing.
Yeah. Cause what they got, she basically had Kelly's, and she's got a Fairplay. They El Dorado just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to get that back up and going. I kind of hope they get that back up and going because you drive by that and you see all the different fairways being all just dried up and it was kind of a sad state there
When
for
we
a
were
while.
kids, that was a good place to go.
Some of the pictures they've been posting recently this last year, it looks like they're making a lot of improvements and stuff out there. So
They're
that's good.
trying.
They're
I think
making
they got one of their old
some leeway.
greenskeepers back. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah. And then there's the country club too, which that was a
Country
little
club.
more higher entry to get there. But we do have there's a lot of golf courses in town.
Well, yeah, because
Around
People
town.
like golf.
except what the Mooberries own that.
El Dorado.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if owned. He ran it.
Oh, we ran it.
I don't know if they owned it for sure. I don't know if they quote unquote owned it or not, but he ran it for a long time, I think. I don't even know if they're still in town.
I don't know
I'm not
because I think the house that they lived in, I think somebody else is living in. So yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, as far as Norfolk, that's we can leave that there. So you work at is it just atmospheric and environmental research? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, AER basically stands for
AER.
Atmospheric and Environmental Research. It's like a subsidy of like Verisk. Verisk is basically kind of known for like insurance.
Oh. Okay. I didn't realize that. So what exactly on an overarching level, we don't have to get into everything yet, but what exactly do you do for AER?
So I do, yeah. Usually, whenever I read my performance reviews, it's basically Chase is the jack of all trades. So it's basically a whole lot of programming, and I do a lot of like AWS work. And so AWS is basically Amazon Web Services, and so I do like a whole bunch of like modeling work. So I do like wharf runs, I do ski chem. Another model that I'm doing right now it's called like CM1, and so it's basically like a 4D hail trajectory kind of path. So you basically start at some point with like hail, and you basically let this embryo grow and it accumulates hail, and then after such amount of time, then you want to see like all the hail fall out, and you basically want to see how the storm is doing, or kind of predicting what the storm is going to kind of be. So you give it like an initial input sounding, so like different parameters. So like at surface it's temperature, wind. You basically try to do that through the entire column, and you basically kind of just make a simulation of what it should look like.
Do those match up pretty well when stuff actually happens? Like, can you predict it pretty well?
For the most part. So yeah, the stuff that I'm working on now, like I'm doing stuff with South America hail. We were just running some wharf simulations, and based on the parameters that we decided to choose, and going off like the satellite, I was like one of the images. I don't know if you guys see one of those images.
I kind of looked at them. Yeah, I forgot to print it in color, but I did print it out.
Yeah, so you basically get to see, what the radar returns are for the entire area, and then you get to see like the swath that at the satellite goes, and so you basically kind of compare what the truth is from like the satellite and what you're modeling, and you basically kind of say is like, yeah, what this seems right, and if it doesn't, you basically might say like, oh, we might want to tweak a couple parameters within the model.
Was that kind of what?
Yeah, that image right there.
Okay. And I can send some of these images out when we do are these available? Can people see these? Or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe we won't do that.
Not.
Maybe we won't do that. Anyway, I just wanted to bring it up so we could see it. But
So you kind of do some back review and say, okay, so we maybe missed the mark a little bit. Here's why, or here's how. So you keep kind of tweaking your predictions as you keep going.
Yeah. So because like the thing is with like models, it's not truth. That's why I basically call it a model. Is you basically kind of just like gauge,
trying to predict what's going to happen.
Okay.
and so like I can basically come to you and basically say like, oh, I ran X amount of years worth of like hail data. And, this is what, I'm simulating, but then, how do you take it as saying as this is, how can I compare this to something that's actually available that's like truth? And so we have to basically kind of, modify it that says, you take the model data, you take the truth data, and you kind of filter it all together, smooth it out, and basically say is like, how is the model doing against ground truth? That way, is the model reliable or not?
So on a low level of this, you're basically saying if the conditions are right, this could produce hail. Is that kind of what
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. So you did that for that whole region then? South America?
It's for a specific, like a subsection. I don't know what the coordinates really are. I think it's between like 10 and 30.
Oops. Okay. 'Cause I noticed some of these images were also showing other countries, right?
Yeah. So yeah, for this project that, we got the money for, we're focusing on South America.
Okay. And obviously, so your company works obviously with doing other countries. So did they request this or how?
No, so these are through like contracts. So like, let's say NASA were to put out some sort of like proposal and say that they wanted, study some sort of like hail or some sort of like idea. And so that we submit some sort of like proposal and say, we can think of like this idea for X amount of dollars, either the people that work on it. And so, if, the people there like the idea, then they basically kind of give us the funding.
So is this kind of for South American crops, or was this more for?
So when you think of like hail, and so like here in North America and really United States, we have this thing called the SPC outlooks. And so with those, you can basically get like storm reports, and those can be done by like emergency management. It can be done by me and you. And so, the issue is with those, it's not really kind of like reliable. I mean, that's kind of like with one of my research partners here is it's kind of it's what's called is population biases. So like it'll say that it rains hails over Norfolk, Nebraska. The National Weather Service puts out a warning that says severe thunderstorm warning is in effect for like Madison County. There's some sort of like conditions that that need to be met. And so usually like one of those is like wind speeds over, I think it's like 70 miles an hour, hail greater than 1 inches, and I think there might be one other criteria. And so the National Weather Service, they issue these warnings. And so when I did my time at the National Weather Service, we had issued these warnings, and then we don't really have a way to verify if it just falls in an open field. And so what we would do is we would end up calling a lot of farmers, and like their numbers would be available through some sort of like county book. And then I would go through it and I would call up and say, hey, I'm Chase Calkins. I'm an intern for like the National Weather Service. I'm calling because, we issued a severe thunderstorm warning. Did you observe any hail? Was it greater than like 1 inch? And majority of the time, people don't answer. The people that do answer, they're not really receptive to the phone calls. Like, how did you get this number? Because it's unlisted. It's like, well, the government kind of knows.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering. I'm like, do they offer to do this and just be like, you can call me?
And there's some people, because like even like you go on like Facebook and you go on like the National Weather Service for Valley, and they always say it's like, oh, did anyone in the area that we issued, did you guys get 1 inch? Or it's like, hey, even with this past snowstorm, is it how much snow did you get? And I would like to go out to my house and do snow observations, but it's with the snow observations, you're not supposed to just go to like one spot and just say, oh, it was 8 inches. You're supposed to go out and go do several different things.
So I can't go to my tallest drift and measure that.
That's basically how I was like, I got this 4 foot drift here on like my sidewalk, and then like my back patio that's 0, so maybe 2 foot then.
Right.
That's funny. So there's really is there not much technology to be able to see like hail actually in a storm then, besides just having the quote unquote right conditions?
So basically with this the satellite, it basically kind of detects hail, and so it basically kind of gives like a probability that says at this time, at this latitude, longitude, there was like let's say like a 20% chance that this was hail, or like let's say further down the line, like a couple minutes, is at another latitude and longitude, at this point was at like 90%. So, basically kind of given like certain conditions, like, so, we'd test these for like the null set, let's say a medium case, and then like a high probability case. And so you basically go through all these and basically kind of you track the storm. And so the way that we track the storm is we used the GOES stationary satellite that's up in space. And it has 3 different modes of tracking. So it basically kind of takes an image every either 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. There is like some special times where, you can get 1 minute resolutions, but I didn't get a hold of that. So like the stuff that I did, is mostly either 5, 10, or 15 minutes. And so, given, you're looking at that point. So let's say, it's at, let's say it detected hail over Norfolk, Nebraska. Let's just make this easy.
That's
instead of like,
yeah, make it easy. Make it easy.
Instead of like some random town in South America that I might not know.
You're good.
And so let's say that the satellite's over Norfolk, Nebraska, and it says that, over Norfolk, Nebraska at this time, there was hail. I think it was like 90% chance. All right. So then I got to go back and go through all the GOES data. And this is like huge. This is like petabytes worth of data. And so, these files are so big that you don't want to download these things like locally, because then you will fill up your space.
Right. Real fast.
And so you basically got to kind of like access their data like on their...
Like on the cloud.
On the cloud, yeah. I refer like with Amazon like terms, it's like an S3 bucket.
Right.
And so you develop a program that basically says, go out to this website with these special conditions, look at this advanced baseline imager, and say, all right, let's open up the data. And I want to look for the closest point that's at, Norfolk, Nebraska. And so whatever the GOES point is for Norfolk, Nebraska, is it, less than 210 Kelvin? And if it was, then we say is like, it was a hit. So we will track this storm now. So now you have to, so then let's say that it wasn't. So like, it was like a 90% probability. It wasn't. So then you basically kind of just like reject it, and you store it off and say, even this was like a 90%, you kind of just say, you set it aside for, reject it. It didn't work. So like, let's say that now that it did, you accepted it. So now you basically got to go and figure out what all the different values are around it. And so you basically kind of, if you were to basically look at like a radar or anything like that, visually you can watch that go in time and space.
Right.
But now you have to think of a program that would basically kind of try to do that, forwards and backwards in time. And so you basically start, if it's within like 5 kilometers of this point, or that was our threshold, say, is this point within 5 kilometers between the GOES point and this GPM point? And so if it was, then you say yes, and then you basically got to collect all the points around it. So then you're basically saying, here's the upper left, upper middle, upper right, middle left, middle right, and then the 3 bottoms. And then you basically are just getting the values for all those 8 points from your one middle point. And so you can basically say is this first point, is that 210 or less? Yes. The next point is no. Third point, yes. And so you're basically keeping a record of saying, this point here is, less than 210. And you're basically going through that, hundreds and thousands of times and just trying to figure out, the shape of the storm.
Right.
And so then once you get that initial image, then you basically kind of have to track it forwards and backwards in time. And so then you have to basically say, okay, where is the storm, 15 minutes, from now? And that was kind of, difficult to basically kind of say, try to figure out. It's like, here, let's try to move the storm, let's say X kilometers away. That didn't really work because maybe it was either moving too fast and, then you kind of miss it. So then you basically kind of take all the data points and to make sure that you're actually still inside the storm, you kind of give it like some sort of like weighted average that says, I'm predicting that the storm's center is, at some latitude and longitude, 15 minutes from now. And then, so then you pull up the next data repository and you load up the data and say, 15 minutes from now is, that latitude still, 210 or less. And then you basically kind of do the same thing over again. You track the storm, you let it go further down, and then it kind of dissipates. And then at that point you say, okay, the storm has died. And so now I got to do it all over again and kind of just go backwards in time. And so like these storms, like I remember like one storm, it lasted down there in South America for like over 24 hours. And, you know, I was showing it to Dr. Becky Adams-Celine, and she's like, oh, this is real beautiful. Like, you know, we were able to track a storm, you know, for like over 24 hours. This was a huge, massive storm. And so, you know, then after that, then you do a whole bunch of other data sets and you compare it against like level 2 data and say, okay, how many like points of like for like radar that are above like a certain threshold, let's say like above 30, how many pixels are above 30, how many pixels are above 50. So usually what kind of like with like DBZ, I think there's like some sort of like threshold. I don't know if it's the 30 or 50 that says, you know, you kind of correlate that to maybe say like 1 inch or more hail. And so then you basically kind of have to define the storm. Is a storm, you know, like kind of like scattered, or is it like a multi-cell organized cell? And so you classify all those, and then you go out and then you get some like the environmental variables.
So you're like stacking data on top of data on top of data.
It's a whole bunch of data that's just basically kind of thrown all together, and it's like, you know, what can we really do with that? And so, you know, then we kind of like say, what is like the environmental, you know, area around, you know, that point that we initially had. So, you know, so like the data sets that are being like incorporated now, at least that I use for like war simulations, it's called like ERA5. Of course, I don't really know what they stand for. You know, that's the entire thing about the scientific community. It's, you know, it's just acronyms upon acronyms. And so you get all these, you know, all these different data sets, and you get the environmental variables, and then you kind of put it up in other programs and you calculate, you know, storm relative felicity or CAPE, let's say, you know, because like, let's say you, and like the SIN. So basically when you're thinking like those variables, you're basically kind of saying like, you know, like CAPE and SIN, that's more kind of like related to like tornadoes. It's basically the conditions are right or not right for, you know, tornadic activity or some sort of like hail activity. And so that's kind of like what some of those like bar graphs earlier were showing.
Here?
Yeah. So yeah, you're comparing like goes against like the mid-level CAPE and the lapse rates.
Gotcha. So this sounds very time-consuming and complicated.
Yeah,
A little bit.
Yeah, since I'm on several projects at once, usually how they divide up my time is like, I think like even like this year, I think I'm like scheduled for like 670 hours or so for like this project. And so like the stuff that I'm working on right now is like this CM1 model where I'm, you know, trying to basically kind of get like all these processors to kind of talk to each other to make these runs run faster. Cause you know, we got to make these runs run for how many hours at a time. And then you get like all the hail that falls out, and then you kind of like add it back to the storm and simulate the hail growth and all the different, size that it's going to be, or what the radar return is going to be.
So you had to find out how big the hail was in certain areas, and then like.
So you can't. So with the CM1 model, it will do that, but it's an idealized model. So it's not. It's like perfect conditions.
Oh, so it's not okay. Okay, makes sense.
And your focus is literally just on the hail part. Like it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with the whole rest of the storm, just the hail piece.
For that study, right?
Yeah. So it's basically kind of just saying like, this is like the environmental variables that are like typical for like hail growth, maybe in like South America.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to talk about on that specific study? Anything important?
Yeah, I don't think there's much, unless there's some other images on there that you wanted to.
Well, it's tough to, with them not being able to, with the listeners not being able to see them. I don't want to talk too much about images.
That's why it needs to be like a video one.
A video.
It's gonna be.
Yeah.
It'll be a video one. I didn't know how much these images you wanted out. I didn't know for sure. We'll have you back on again, and we'll talk more about other stuff when we actually have video in like a month. So if you want to get maybe on a high level or whatever you know, get into like maybe the air quality study, I can pull that up too.
I didn't know if you want to do,
or we can. We're at about an hour, so I don't know how much we can do. I'm kind of. I kind of want to know a little more about that ammonia, the ammonia study. If I can find it. Is that this one? Nope, that was. Do you know which one of these files it was?
it was the NH3 validation one, the one at the bottom.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you go into that one a little bit for us?
Yeah, so this is actually a journal article that actually just got published on Monday the 5th. And so with this one, you're basically you're taking NH3 observations. So NH3 is ammonia, and you're basically kind of going over like farmland, and you're kind of just trying to figure out what the concentration is over like the farm. And so like you're taking aircraft measurements.
Is this a climate change study then, or no?
Not really climate change. It's more kind of like a validation.
Gotcha.
So like there's in situ ground sites that are, I don't think for like state level, I don't think there's any sort of like NH3 like threshold, because I think like the EPA might be trying to get something like that. But I think like as far as like state level,
that's kind of why I was asking you, because I know that they're trying to say cows are farting too much. And,
right.
Yeah.
I'm like, does this have to do with
cows are bad.
cow farts and flatulence?
So anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So basically, all these different like farms. I think this one was in Idaho, and there was like just a kind of like cluster, and so you have aircraft that would basically fly through different levels of the atmosphere, recording ammonia levels, and then you have two different types of, because I think AIRS is the aircraft, AIRS and Chris is satellite against the aircraft. And so you kind of compare the two different instruments against the aircraft, and so it's kind of getting kind of real technical there, because then with that stuff, you're basically kind of talking about constraint vectors and averaging kernels. So with like the averaging, the constraint vector, I want to say, what is that? That is, I have to find it.
You can look if you want. I got it up here too. It's kind of hard to see on here, but so basically what?
Yeah. So yeah, the constraint vector is basically it's estimating the true state of the atmosphere, and then the averaging kernel is basically trying to gauge, the sensitivity of that constraint vector. So the sensitivity of that retrieval. So since the satellite can't really, as the satellite looking down, it'll have an observation, but it's not the true overall observation, because the atmosphere isn't clear. There's a bunch of stuff in the way, so you basically kind of have to remove the atmosphere. So that's why you are applying all these different constraint vectors or averaging kernels to it. You're basically trying to get like what is the true value of like that point,
which is what you needed like the plane readings for and all that, or
so you're taking those plane readings.
So you're taking the satellite images and you're taking the plane readings and kind of comparing them. Is that what you're kind of doing, or? Yeah.
So you're basically kind of saying like, what is the, so like you're saying like, so you're taking the aircraft, or you're taking the satellite minus like the aircraft, and you're trying to see what the difference is between at these certain levels.
Okay. So NH3 is also just naturally produced on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so adding that that can also be produced by plane emissions or fossil fuels, or no?
Yeah, kind of.
in the little, I didn't do a whole lot of research, but so I guess what did your study conclude with then? I guess
it's basically just kind of like an evaluation, because I'm just basically kind of like a contributing offer on this. So like Karen was the one that basically is like the first officer, and so she's the one that basically like, kind of like comes out and finds me and says, Chase, I want you to go through like all this data and make all these different images. So like that's like my role within like this. So like she's telling me exactly what to do. So
Is that what you do with a lot of the studies? You just kind of
the majority of the studies, yeah,
data points and image them out?
yeah.
That's
So
cool.
like get kind of like, you know, the last thing that we were talking about with the South America hail. So like, you know, that project's, you know, Dr. Becky Adams-Saline, and, you know, she comes to me and she's like, you know, Chase, you know, here's the project that I have. And, you know, I want you to basically kind of create, you know, these
So you
images
kind
for
of
the
do
paper.
the graphs and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when it comes to these, I know you said they come to you and talk to you about them. Do you have the opportunity to volunteer in certain projects? Do you know about the projects before you're
No.
asked to participate in
No.
them?
I would actually be, you know, real nice if I could, you know, because like, you know, they say at the end of the year that, oh, Chase, you're fully booked, like you're 300% booked.
Yeah.
And so like we need to kind of, you know, like make sure that, you know, you're not working 24/7. So we
Right.
kind of need to, you know, think wisely of your time. And so, you know, you're going to work on these projects this year. And so, yeah, I don't really get like a choice, but, you know, since seems to be some sort of like demand for like the kind of work that I do,
Yeah.
either with like, you know, different Amazon web services that I can do, you know, the programming, how efficiently I can make everything, you know, paper quality images. You know, it's kind of like an in-demand job for me.
So you kind of have somebody who, I'm assuming you're not the only person that does the kind of thing that you do, or are you?
So make these images, or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, the team, there's a whole bunch of people that, you know, work for AER. Most of it is, you know, proposal based. And so like even like Dr. Becky Adams-Saline, like she can make, you know, her own images. Like, you know, majority of those images, I think, you know, the beginning of, you know, the paper that I sent you for the South America hail, like those are like images that she was talking about with having to do with like, you know, like the mountain ranges.
Mm-hmm.
So is she giving the information to somebody and saying, I need somebody that can do this. I need somebody that can do this. And you have somebody within the company that's dedicated to allocating the resources to these projects, or do they kind of just pick who they need?
Yeah.
Does
I
that
think
question even make sense?
I think it goes like, you know, who, you know, what kind of like demand does, you know, like this project need? So like even this week, you know, like we were trying to put together a team for NASA for like a fire team. And of course I haven't done anything with fire ever. So, but you know, like the items that they're, you know, wanting, so like modeling, programming, and
It's
all
like
that.
random fires or just like,
I don't know, we don't really know what,
oh, okay.
because like this proposal is basically kind of
Sorry.
like a intent. Say it's like, oh, here's the fire weather team that we're going to do, and if the people say that they like it or not, then we can go ahead and say that, you know, what kind of like research that we would be kind of like focused in.
Gotcha. So when it comes to like, let's say the South America study, how long were you working on that?
I'm still doing it.
working on it.
I think I've been working on it for at least a year now. I don't know if a year and a half, or if it's just
So you guys publish something and then keep going?
eventually. So like she'll give like quarterly talks or so, or she'll go to different meetings and basically kind of present the research. And, you know, at these conferences, you know, you get together with all these other scientists and they look at your work and they say, oh, have you tried doing this, or have you thought about doing this? And then you come back and then that's how you get all these different ideas to kind of bounce around. And so like at the end of this project, I don't know if she's planning on just doing the one or if there's going to be two. I know there's actually a real huge one that we just submitted. I think the proposal was like around like $20 million. It involves like a handful of different universities. I think it's supposed to span like for some years. And so like we're hopefully going out and like renting a plane, flying it through thunderstorms. And so like what my job in that would basically be is getting all the ERA 5 data, so like all the environmental variables, and putting it inside the WRF and basically saying is like, okay, here's what the models say. I think this is where you guys should go fly the plane and get all the data.
This is
That's
a manned
super cool.
plane?
Yeah.
And they're going to fly through the storm?
Yeah.
Like in it?
Uh-huh.
Hope they have a good life insurance policy.
Right? Jeez.
That's crazy.
So why aren't drones used for something like that?
There are. So like I think even like in like Nebraska, I think you have to get like special permits to kind of even like fly on this. But like there's like I think there's like a small subsection in like southwest Nebraska where you can do like unmanned, like use drones and fly
Right.
through storms.
Okay.
But yeah, usually I think like trying to get like the hoops to go through that because I think
So it's easier to get a manned plane than it is to get a drone?
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me.
That makes crazy sense.
Yeah, because I think because you can only do in that one section. And if we wanted to do it here in like town, I think
why,
it has to
they
do
don't
like,
they don't want other drones. Somebody like me
Right.
going and flying a drone, but
I think it has to do with like like the government and with the air traffic controls and possibly hitting an airplane and stuff like
Right.
that.
that'll be kind of cool to find that data out, though.
Yeah, so yeah, we put that in. I think we're hoping to hear back from that in May, and hopefully get that because that'll be 4 years worth of work on that. And I think the plan is for them to go out and do a couple conferences, a couple international conferences, and write like 2 or 3 papers or so on that.
That'll be fun. What's your favorite project that you've worked on while being there? Tough questions here on this podcast.
Yeah, because there's really not a whole lot that I don't really.
Obviously, you enjoy your job.
I enjoy the
Yeah.
job. It's trying to find like here's like maybe a project that I don't really care too much about because it doesn't really interest me or not. Since I tend to do a whole lot of like modeling work, working with the wharf, and me doing like atmospheric chemistry. The one that I get to work on is like ski chem, and so like that one's kind of like so like anyone can go out and use like these models by the way to begin with. So like you yourself, you can go out and put this on your computer and run model simulations.
Really?
Right. So if you
Just
want
like software?
yeah, so when you're doing this, like you can go out and find like free compilers. So like the one that everyone can use is called like G Fortran. If you ever had a chance to work with Fortran, I suggest that you don't because
Never have. Never. I don't know if I ever have.
I think I just did that last night.
Just
kidding.
it's been around. I think it was at least developed.
I've
in
heard the
early
name before,
70s.
yeah.
And I always tell Becky, it's like I really dislike working with Fortran. I'm waiting for the day like everything just like goes to Python, and she's like, it's not going to go anywhere soon. It's like I really hope they keep on making Python faster. That way I can do all this stuff. And because like with Fortran, the reason why Fortran is like so effective, it can just do like thousands of calculations. Is just like like in an instant, and then you're trying to do it and so like you're doing like all these different processes within like like milliseconds, and it's just doing all these different calculations.
So with today's technology, they haven't been able to come up with something better since the 70s?
It's not that it hasn't been it's just not developed for it. So like there's like the Fortran, there's like C++ like compilers,
Right.
and so like that's what you kind of like Intel. If you want it to be slightly faster, you can use like an Intel compiler, which is we bought a license. And so whenever I do like my wharf runs, that's what I use. I use an Intel compiler.
Okay.
And so like when I had to, so like at that point I was basically kind of like a software engineer, and so you're basically trying to get like all the different libraries that need to be compatible for this one model to work together. And so you're installing how many different ones. Like I have a spreadsheet and instructions like on how to do it. So like, because like it wasn't like ever coded. So like people would be like, how do you do this? Like, and so like I was like, I finally took the time. I was like, okay, we'll put this on like AWS. And so you're going through and you're gonna get through like hundreds of like compilation errors. And so you have to go through and just try to figure out like each different one. And so like a big one with like Amazon, and putting everything on like an S3 bucket. Like it doesn't like soft links. And so basically like what a soft link is, it's saying like, here's this program here, but it's really here. It doesn't like that. It wants it here.
Got you.
So you basically had to write your own little guide almost of what
Yeah. And
these
so
little
that's basically
errors
kind of
and
like the
stuff
standard
are.
for like AER now is like whenever someone wants to use like Wharf, they're using my like a little sheet that says like, here's how to install it. And then,
Just put a patent on that. Get a couple dollars every time somebody uses it.
I think I get like a little recognition. It's like, Chase did this. So like, if you have any questions, email Chase.
Oh, and that's not, you don't want that, yeah.
Yeah. Because when we compile that, you're using like a specific like image or like an operating system. And so like when I built it, you're doing basically everything on like a Linux subsystem. And so like, what we're doing it on is called like CentOS 7. And CentOS 7 is, deemed EO, I think in a couple months. And so like now the issue is like, the company is like, oh, we want to use everything as like Amazon Linux as like our base image. And so now you're trying to go back and still using like the same instructions that I had compiled, and now they don't work. And so you're trying to go through and it's like, oh, well, these libraries don't exist, or you have to put on this special flag that will turn something on. And so I can remember for like one of the projects that we were doing, because like they were saying it's like, we need to rebuild this whole entire library for like this image. And we're like, we don't have, like the manpower for this. Like right now, let's put it off. And so like, we're still using, like a different image to run all these different runs. And I think somebody else is probably going through and taking the time and trying to get all this stuff compiled as whatever the company wants.
So all this programming and coding that you have to do, did you take a class on that when you were going through college, or is it just something you kind of knew or you had to learn?
Everything is basically, so like the Fortran, University of Nebraska, they had a Fortran class.
On that?
Just on Fortran. And that's basically just, you're going in there, you're creating Fortran programs and you're running them, and, you spit out some, different messages. So like, the simplest program executable is, like hello world. And so you basically just, with that, it's, like write star.out and stuff like that. And you just say print hello world, and, you compile with the G-Fortran, and then you execute the program, and then you'll see on there, it says, oh, hello world. And like Python, which is much, much easier, you just say print hello world. So
with Fortran, so is that something specifically for your industry, or is that something that's used by other? I guess maybe that's a dumb question, but
like for like the science community, yeah, a lot of stuff is either written in Fortran. Usually it's like F70 or F90, and then I think there's some C stuff.
But it's mostly the scientific community.
Yeah, okay. I think we're one of the main people that use it. I think there's probably
other industries wouldn't use that for anything.
Probably not. Like okay. I know like the scientific community, like they're fully dependent on like Fortran.
So the class was basically for meteorology.
Yeah. So that was like one of the requirements.
Okay.
That we had to take. You had to take that Fortran class. But then like, the university was doing everything like IDL. And I think the university has now moved towards like Python, which is free.
Okay. There's a lot more free things, free software, things like that.
Well, I think even like now, even in high school, like programming wasn't available.
Not for us, no.
No, because I think even now, I think there is now programming.
Well, now they're starting to do simple coding in like grade school.
Oh. I was going to say like...
They call it coding, but...
Well, in my previous job, they would partner up with some of the elementary schools and do some of that. And I think I heard, was it my nieces and nephews recently? They made the comment about how they went through this simple coding class, and
yeah, they don't call it that, but it's like a game that they play. From what I remember Christian doing,
is it Scratch? I wonder.
I have no clue. They call it. They said that they were coding. Shoot, I don't know what they were doing though.
I don't remember.
They probably didn't even know what they were doing.
Yeah, because like one of my I kind of want to get like a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know much about like Raspberry Pi.
I do, yeah.
Because like if you want to make like your own like home weather station, you basically put in this Raspberry Pi, and you can.
It's basically a very basic PC.
Yeah. And so like you can do a whole bunch of different things like with this like Raspberry Pi. So like if you want to block ads, you can create this program called like Pi-hole, and it will just block out all ads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can run like. Somebody had told me when I first was starting to build PCs, when a Christian was going to get his, that like a Raspberry Pi could run certain games. It's not going to run like Call of Duty or nothing, but it'll run like Minecraft.
I think the more advanced ones, because I think it started off with like Pi 0, and I think they're up to Pi 4 now or something like
It's
that.
just a little,
Yeah, so like if you
very small.
like if you do like racing cars or stuff like that, even like maybe I think even like battle bots, if you see stuff like on that,
It's like a more advanced motherboard. It's like a little PC.
Okay.
So that makes sense.
Sure.
It's got the whole, yeah.
I'm like, why raspberry? Where's the peach? Where's the apple?
That's just what it's called.
Okay.
right. So you have Apple.
I'm kidding.
You have Apple.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, see?
That's true.
Quit asking for more.
I
I'm just
know.
kidding.
I'm needy. So Python's the favorite though.
Yeah, so
More straightforward, more clean.
it's a lot easier to work with. It's it's free. It's really easy to learn. There's a whole bunch of I guess libraries, I guess is what the real term is called, but I guess I like to call them like functions. So if I want if I want to develop like a function, I can import the function that I create and I can create it into like my program. So that way I don't like my program isn't, like 1,000 lines long. It's, I send it out to another process to do it in some other library and bring it back to the main
So it
program.
sounds like way less steps, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. The only real downside with Python is that I found is it's just kind of slow with like looping through items. So if you have like a huge amount of data, trying to go through, let's say, millions of data points, and you're trying to go through, like let's say a double or triple array, and you got to go through, 1 through a million, and then inside of that, 1 through a million for, a nested loop. So then you're at, a million times a million different, steps that you're trying to calculate all these different points for. And that gets like really slow. And that's when like Python or Fortran will come in through and, do that stuff in, just seconds.
Can you mesh the two? Is it something you can?
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering.
So like Python does have a library, I think it's called F2Py, and where you would write something in Fortran and then you basically kind of compile it as like a Python program and then import it. So that's basically kind of like how I had to do the South America hail stuff is since you're going through, and these storms can be so huge, it's
You're going through
thousands
all
of
that
points.
data.
And doing with Python, it's taking hours just to maybe go through like a single event. And so then you write it in Python, it can go through in a whole entire, like 15 minutes in just like a couple of seconds. So it dramatically decreases, your runtime on your simulations or just even, simple programs.
Wow. That's crazy. That sounds like you have a lot to do.
Yeah.
For everything you got going on.
Yeah. And I think, even one of the, just recently they were trying to make me kind of start doing stuff with like R, which is another programming.
You got to learn all these different things.
Yeah. You start off with the Fortran and then you go to IDL and you become like a master in like IDL. And then since IDL is, profit based, you got to pay for this license every single year. And I think that's why, UNL kind of went away from it. And so that's why they went to Python, which is free. There is some kind of maybe like security risk, as you're downloading, because I know that was a huge thing with the government is trying to get them to incorporate all these different libraries and say like, okay, I went home and I wrote this program and it uses these libraries, and then they go out and they do some sort of like risk assessment and say it's like, oh, this module here, it can be grounds for like somebody can hack in and try to get the data. And so
they're pretty sticklers when it comes to what they take in program wise or what they let on base. Like I worked for Sterling for a year, Sterling Computers, and we sold computer equipment to government programs. It was very tough to you had to get certain part numbers, you had to get certain everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so yeah, you get like all these waivers and so they finally relented and they finally caved in to do all this stuff. And but like, so I had written all these
And
programs.
that's
like,
how China got in, huh? Was it you?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
And so I wrote the stuff all at home, and then so like I need to put it on like the government computer because that's where like all their data is, because like, I can't take the data from the government and put it on my computer.
Right.
And so then
No,
you're
just
basically,
Hillary Clinton could do that.
yeah, so I basically got instead of like emailing my program to myself on like the government thing, like they wouldn't let you do that. So I had to go in there and just like redo the entire program on like their systems and get everything working and make sure it's still spitting out the same stuff that I'm getting on my side on their side.
Well,
How many hours a week on average do you work?
40.
40.
40.
Well, I know we've talked about a lot of projects, and obviously.
So yeah, there's times like I know even like with like some like the ski chem stuff. I remember when the entire thing with Russia was still going down with like Ukraine that February. I remember staying up late nights and trying to get this model to run because it would take hours on end for it to, because you're doing so like with ski chem is an atmospheric chemistry model, and so you basically kind of give it some sort of like emission, and so you're basically kind of just trying to make it figure out 24 hours from now what is the concentration of like some sort of aerosol. So let's say like SO2, NH3, PM2.5 through time and space. And so, like those, like the low resolution models. So like, let's say 10 kilometers or 5 kilometer resolution images, but like, let's say that we wanted to do some sort of like high image resolution. So like, let's say like 100 meters. And so like those runs would take forever. Cause like at that time we hadn't set up a way to do stuff on like the Amazon Web Services and do stuff with like batch. That's what I got to do with like the Mexican electrical generating units. I set all that stuff up on batch because otherwise that was going to just take me, days on end just to do one simulation. Because like some of those simulations would take like 48 hours or plus more to run.
So do you have to have a pretty beefy computer to run all this stuff, or does it do it on like a cloud-based system?
So it's all cloud-based. So like with Amazon, what you do is you basically send it through batch. And so like you basically request services. So like let's say
it's like a credit card batch where you're sending your end of day credit cards to the credit card company.
But
that's all I'm gonna. When I hear batch, that's what I think of as a batch.
So like the batch is like it's just like I want to submit like a whole bunch of jobs. So like let's say
a batch of stuff. Yeah.
So like let's say January 1st or January 31st. So like let's say I want to run 1 month of data, and instead of me going through run January 1st on like a Docker container or something like that and taking forever, I can submit all like 31 jobs all at once. And these processors are just it gets like January 1st it gets its own processor, and so like you have to request virtual CPUs. And so like with SkiCam, it doesn't really matter because you can only run it on like a single thread. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason for you to be like really requesting like 72 instances or so and try. But if you were to do that, basically, then you're basically just trying to make 72 programs just running all in one single instances instead of just putting in like its own instance at one time.
So with Amazon Web Services, is that something that your company has to pay for that service then?
Yeah, correct. So like we pay
because you see it on like football.
Yeah.
Like,
So like with like the NFL, like let's say Jefferson had like a 3% chance to catch this, and so like at each individual time frame, it's gathering millions of points and it's doing predictive, and that's basically kind of like what the like
is the service doing that? Do they have to input all the data?
It feeds it into like a program, so like kind of like SageMaker.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. That's what I'm asking though. You see AWS a lot with different things, not just football or what you're talking about. So do they have to to work with you guys? Do they have to get any kind of security clearance? Like, are they like government?
So there's two different
certified
things. So there's Amazon, and then there's Amazon, which is AWS. And then there's AWS GovCloud. So like,
so they have one.
Yeah. Okay. So they do have one. So like, if you want to do anything like government related, you gotta get a government cloud one.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to do anything with that, even with on off at Air Force Base.
And I know I'm asking you questions that you don't always know the answers to, because it just seems like a little bit of a security risk too, a little bit, having it all be web based like that. You're putting in data. I'm not saying Amazon's bad, but
so with these buckets, you can basically kind of like encrypt them so that way only certain people can access the data. Yeah. And so like there's headaches with that. And so like let's say that I wanted to give you access to this bucket, then we have to kind of get clearance and then create a whole key for you and send it to you and basically get everything.
So there's a lot of stuff behind it. So it's maybe not as easy as I thought in the first place.
Yeah, it's more of a company policy instead of like if I were to go and set up something on the S3 bucket and just not put any like protections on it, and it's just like an open bucket to the public, the company could find it and be like, yeah, why is this, not in compliance? We need to fix, all the different permissions that you have on this bucket.
So I'm sure you have a whole compliance department that checks on all that stuff.
Yeah.
I know, like, back when I worked at Daycoast and stuff, I mean, we had, government things that we worked with there too. And I mean,
isn't that mostly what you guys did was government contract stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, to get some of the access and stuff to some of the websites that you needed, talking about like keys and things like that, like that makes me kind of twitch a little bit. Cause I mean, anytime you needed that, I mean, it was, they always had to make sure, obviously they weren't just giving access to anybody. So you had to supply your birth certificate, if you got married, your marriage license and all these other things so that you could go through the whole gamut of everything. And you could only access it with your key.
And you guys were just moving stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yet no voter ID for voting. There's a lot
more to it than that. But
are you cool with taking a quick pause?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're back. I made it an hour and a half this time, not just an hour. I'm getting better. I'm making progress. So you mentioned before we took break there that you had to get government clearance.
Yep.
Can you explain a little bit about why you had to get that and what kind of clearance you actually have?
So I had to get, for me to be hired, that because the initial work that I got hired on for was to bring high stuff, like top secret stuff down to like, like a civilian level. But so like I technically only have like secret clearance. And so like you have to basically kind of fill out a form and you state on there, like your full name, your parents, your wife, your kids, where you live for like the last 10 years, your jobs. And yeah, I think, these things are good for like 10 years. So I think I got like another 3 years left on mine. Hopefully it just as easy as just like getting it recertified and not having, because like once you submit this, then like a secret agent or like an FBI agent like will contact you and will ask you. They basically just go through line by line of like everything that you answered.
Yep.
And like is your name really Chase Calkins? Did you really live at this address in Lincoln, Nebraska? And you basically say yes or no. And then
did they hook you up to a polygraph when you're doing that, or
no? we actually just went to just like a quiet room in like a public library down in Lincoln, and so that's where they just did these questions. And so as she's rating them, there's like sometimes on there where she'd be like, did you have any like write-ups or did you have any like issues at work? And like let's say like for like FedEx. Let's say I came in too late and I didn't disclose that, and I technically had a write up for it. That should have been.
You have to say all your write ups.
Yeah, you had to say like everything that like could be potentially used against you.
Did you have to talk about Miss Henry's class too?
No.
I had to take a class twice.
Oh yeah, so you go in there and let's say that I didn't put on. Like let's not say I didn't. Let's say I forgot to put on. Let's say on the sheet that says like, oh, I didn't call in for work or I showed up late, and so I got like a write up for it. Mm-hmm. And so like, she would ask me is like, why didn't you disclose that on your paper? Is like, well, because I really don't think the government really cares if I arrive like a half an hour late to FedEx in the morning, so I didn't really consider that to be a huge security concern. Right. She's in there writing her notes and saying these are like his statements and stuff like that.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that is wild.
I probably wouldn't have even have remembered that to even say, oh
yeah, because there's like different levels. So like, yeah, there's clearance, there's top secret, and I think there's even more above that. And so like, I think even like difference between like secret and top secret, I think, you know, like the government, I don't think it's doing like another form. I think it's just going through and just like a higher level of like, you know, digging into like this person. And so
right, making sure you're.
And so like, even with me having that, like I never, there's like, you know, top secret rooms that you get to go in on off at Air Force Base. And, you know, I never had to go inside of there and do anything.
So I was going to ask you. So just secret clearance isn't going to let you get us the Epstein files. Oh, okay.
Dang.
Darn it.
So yeah, yeah, I was originally hired for AER, and so I was part of Northrop Grumman had what was called a Seams 3 contract.
Yep.
And so, you know, the government does these contracts with all these different companies, and they want to do like science work. And so one of the areas was bringing like a model from like the high side down to like the low side. And so when I first got started, like I didn't even know what AWS was. Like I look at AWS and I thought it's like, well, A might be like Amazon, because like it was like 15 minutes before I get this call. I started looking at like AWS. It's like, you know what AWS is? Like, well, I think like 15 minutes ago I didn't know what, you know, AWS stands for, but it's something to do with like Amazon. And, you know, then they fly me out to, you know, the head office there in Boston. And, you know, one of the guys was trying to teach me everything about like Amazon within like 2 days. And so then, because he's up on like the board disclosing everything like with batch and writing all these different programs, you know, like at the end of the day, you know, they're like, do you think you can go back home and do this? It's like, I don't even know what you guys did like the last 2 days. Like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, now that you get like into like a routine, you know, I've done this for, you know, how many years, you know, now it's real easy to kind of do. And now, you know, people come to me and ask me to basically kind of set up all their stuff to get all these, you know, different model runs running or so.
Like within your company or just?
Yeah, within my company.
Gotcha.
But as far as like, yeah, so like being hired on, so doing the stuff with Northrop Grumman and doing the Seams contract here, there was a model that they want to bring from the high side, low side, I said. So they would run the model, and then you would go through and figure out, it's like, here's a point, and you want to basically kind of get the points around it. So it was like, is what you ran before the same as what you got? And they weren't, so I don't know what some of the different settings were, why they were different. And so then once everything got brought down, then you basically had to you make all the different images and say, you know, because the model was a climatology, and the government didn't want like a climatology record. They wanted something that was more robust. They wanted something that was like real time. It says, so like for like an instance, so like, let's say, what is like the aerosol optical depth at, you know, 6Z or so for a certain date at any location in the world. And so that's what, you know, this model would do. And you get it for like the entire world. And so like, that would be like the report for the day. And so, you know, they go off and do these different places, and they say, it's like, okay, you know, here's how dirty the air is for like this day or something like that. And so with the real-time data, they were putting in it was the UK model, so the GALWIM, and Northrop was in charge of doing all that. And so they basically got the contract that says, you know, we think that this real-time model would be a lot better than doing the climatology model. And so they had their own team try to set everything up. And, you know, at the very end, it was kind of disappointing because, you know, we didn't really get to kind of like see it through because Seams 3 was kind of being let go. They got transferred over to a new company because like Northrop Grumman had won it for like the last how many years.
The contract got sold off?
It's not that I got told off, that the contract would expire.
Oh, expire, yeah.
And
so that's kind of what
the companies that like submitted for like, you know, I think it's called TADS now. And so like Northrop put in for, I think Raytheon put in for, and I think SAIC put in for, and SAIC won. And so basically they were trying to get everything done as soon as possible. And the one girl that I went to school with, she was the one that was actually the one building the model and getting everything run. She couldn't get, you know, the stuff to really run right. So like whatever data that they could get, you know, I got it and compared it against like, let's say like Aeronet sites. And so like with those things, they're basically little, cylinders that are pointed towards the sun, and it basically kind of gauges how dirty the atmosphere is.
At any given point, is what you're saying? So
like,
they're located like all over the place?
It's basically always pointing like at the sun. So
Right, but they can be located anywhere
in the world. Yes.
Yeah. Going back to the contracts, when they expire and somebody else takes them over, do you think that kind of doesn't halt the process, but do you think it makes the process longer to finish those?
Like they kind of like ask for like extension sometimes, and sometimes the government will give it. But like with my stuff, since I wasn't really part of Northrop, I was just a subcontractor through.
Yes, I was gonna say you're just a subcontractor, yeah.
Yeah, and so like my time there was basically kind of done. So they're rushing me to get like all my stuff done to basically present it to the government. And at the very end, I actually have no idea like if they presented the stuff to the government or not, or how it turned out.
So basically, so Northrop hired AER.
Yeah.
And then whoever took it over didn't.
Well, no, like at that point, like that project was done. The whole project was done.
Oh, okay.
And so I think SAIC, they got the contract now, and some of the rumors that I've been hearing around is like the government isn't really too happy with them, and I think they're not doing a whole lot of science work with the SAIC.
I'm okay with bids for the government, but it's like, you guys ever seen that movie with Jonah Hill? I forget what it's called. It's Jonah Hill, and it's selling ammunition to the government. Is basically what it is. I forget what it's called.
In my movie.
I know. Anyway, it's basically
extension.
They want to. They were like just these young kids that won a ammunition contract, and then they ended up buying stuff from like Russia and selling it repackaged.
Oh, I haven't seen
to the government. But that's what you run into when you get this contract-based stuff. You get these. Not saying SCIC is bad, but anyway.
Yeah, because I think since Northrop lost that, I think they basically poached a whole bunch of employees from Northrop to come over to.
Of course
SIC.
they did. Because they were already. That's what I'm talking about. As far as they lose traction when it switches like that from Northrop to SAC, because they're taking over something that they had no idea what was going on with it.
Yeah, so I don't know how long these contracts work. So like I think one of the main reasons that even that they even chose it, I'm not 100% sure if this is even truthful, but like Northrop had won it for so many years. I think
that's usually how it goes. Yeah,
the government didn't want to basically play. Have a monopoly on Northrop, so they basically kind of let somebody else have it. That's what I think.
That's how it goes. But then I think we're still paying like the government's paying more to have that done, because then it has to go longer because somebody else is taking over a project that they didn't start. I guess is what I'm saying.
But yeah, so they basically kind of think of like all these different projects to kind of do, and they kind of submit it to like the government and say here's the things that we want to study.
That's crazy. So let's get into the because that was a government one, right?
This was a co-op with the government it's basically called, it was a CRADA, so it's Cooperative Research. I don't know what the rest of it stands for.
That's okay.
I just know it was a cooperative research, but it wasn't really cooperative in the end.
Okay. But anyway, it's a turbulence study.
Yeah. So what this study does, so what I use is, surprisingly, I used Amazon again. This time I used a SageMaker. And so what we wanted to basically kind of figure out was, can I take airplane data and wherever the airplane is flying, get the readings from the aircraft and then put them inside of like a model. So like, let's say, does temperature affected or relative humidity, wind, elevation, the way of the plane. And so you feed it all into like a model.
Were they trying to predict turbulence here? Is that what they were trying to do?
Yeah. So let's say given these parameters, it could possibly be, turbulence let's say the aircraft weighs, I have to go through here.
It's okay. I remember seeing it.
So for this study, we did like a medium aircraft, and, they say medium aircraft. So like a 737. So it's somewhere between, like 15,000 pounds and 300,000 pounds.
Yep.
And so, we give ourselves like a threshold of like 44. And so you basically kind of put these things into the model, and so like the aircraft kind of it. So with this one, it you have like the eddy dissipation rate, and so you calculate the turbulence at a given point at each point in the atmosphere, and you're basically kind of saying is like, okay, the aircraft is flying through, this type of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a null set, and could there be light turbulence, medium? And so like you basically kind of want it to say, it's either there's two different ways to do it. It's either A or B. So when in that case it's like a binary, so it's either yes or no.
Right.
And so in the simple case, that's how you kind of start off with as is, binary, and so yes or no. And so you kind of do it's called like a confusion matrix. And so with that, you're basically kind of saying like, here's like a true positive, so like a hit, and like a false positive, or a true negative. There was no turbulence there at that point. And so you're basically trying to gauge how the model is looking and scoring these things and saying, is the model doing good or not? And so once you get this, initial result, then you basically hypertune it is what the phrasing is. And you put all these different parameters, and so you branch it off, and let's say I want 6 different branches and so many different weights, and the computer will just pick, like random numbers, and it goes through and then it will score it. And then it say, here's like the best case scenario. And then you model that and say, it's like, okay, so here's where we were initially that I had programmed, and what the model thought, here's what it would actually be. And then you kind of compare the two and saying, is the model working or is it not working?
And obviously this was for turbulence. Do you know what the reason to do this study was for? Like, what were they?
I think the end result was for clouds. Like they just,
clouds?
Yeah, because I think, it was,
To avoid certain clouds, or just
I think kind of like replacing clouds, like, should clouds be here? Clouds shouldn't be here. I think that was the main goal, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I think,
I'm confused. Placing, like, what do you mean? Clouds should, like,
because, when you have satellites, there's like a corrective term. So like where that, something is supposed to be here and it's not. And so you have to
like
go
on the satellite image?
Yeah.
Oh. You get conspiracy theorists like me. I'm like, what do you mean clouds are supposed to be here and not supposed to be here? We're placing clouds now? Like, you're good.
Yeah. So
so it wasn't actually an airline study. It was more still a weather based.
Yeah, it's weather based because it's still using, this one, instead of like ERA 5, it's using the ERA I data set, which is now obsolete. And so you're basically just getting, parameters from that. And so you're getting, different stuff, temperature, dew point, different calculations, divergence, convergence. And you're basically just throwing all this stuff in a model and saying, what are, important parameters for it.
So this wasn't actually based to try to predict turbulence. It was more just to study clouds.
No, this one was for turbulence.
Oh, okay. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
But I think the overall goal was basically saying is like, since we can do this with, turbulence, can we apply it towards other areas?
That's what I'm. It's okay. So the whole basis of this was to try to predict what weather patterns were going to have turbulence. Okay, that's what I was. Sorry, maybe my question wasn't very good. Sorry about that.
That's pretty common. I'm
like
kidding.
My questions?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm kidding though.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about on the turbulence one?
I don't think so. Not unless you want to talk about any of the different graphs.
So when it comes to like you actually go to board a flight and they say, "Oh, we could run into some turbulence on this one."
So,
it's because of this study, kind of.
So there technically already is like a turbulence kind of a product out there. So like I know with like the National Weather Service, they issue these things. They're called like TAFs. I think it's Terminal Air Report or something like that. And so like these tabs go out to the different towers, and they're basically saying it's like here it tells the pilots where there's basically going to be like turbulence and stuff like that. So they tell them to avoid like those areas or like lay low or fly higher than what they're supposed to be.
We're gonna detour out of the path a little bit just to avoid some of that.
Can you explain this one a little bit? I guess computed the human identified. So is that like human identified turbulence?
So like if you were to look at this graph, you that's what this you people can't see it. There's a green line on there that says like human identified, and you can kind of see go through the middle, and you basically say like that's the mean of that. And so like the two computer generated ones, like those would be two different models of like with the SageMaker, the model training and everything was saying is like, oh, it could be as one feature kind of influence it more than or another.
So what are the purple boxes?
That would actually be grid points. So like that would be the real life data.
Okay.
And so like when you're doing this, the way that you kind of do it, I didn't really explain it that way that great to begin with is, let's say that you have, like 1 million data points.
Mm-hmm.
You need to train the model. So you basically kind of split up, let's say around 70% of the data. So you're taking 700,000 points and you're training this model to basically identify, not anomalies, but like similar, patterns.
Right.
And then what you then do is you need to validate the model, and you take basically kind of like another 15% of that data set. And then, so whatever the computer thought, you validate against that. And then there's there's the training, the validation, and the testing. That's right. Yeah, you got to test it. Yeah. So it's training, testing, and validation.
Okay.
I forgot the
because you got to train the model to do what you want it to do. Yeah. Okay, that's what I was kind of wondering. It's really cool stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm not versed enough to be able to read some of this stuff, but
yeah. So all that stuff is in Python there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be like Python code that says like here's like some of the different parameters and the code that was going into it.
A lot of if-then statement kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so like there's like if you were to go to like the next slide, so like
up or down?
14, I think it is. Yeah, that one. So this is you're starting up the instance. You're finding your bucket that you're putting it in. You need to have some sort of like hardware, and so like this one is when it means like hardware is like the instance type, and it's like how fast is the model going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like then here you got your different hyperparameters, so like your max depth, your gamma, your child weights, your objectives. And so this one was doing binary logistics, and how you're evaluating it is called AUC, which stands for area under the curve. And so you're basically trying to gauge, how well or how right it is.
So you had to input all this information?
Mm-hmm.
Smart guy. I don't even know what I'm looking at. But.
That's weird. I do.
Do you?
No.
Oh.
Are you kidding me?
It's really cool, though. I mean,
it is.
Yeah. And just some of the different... Obviously, the once we have video, we might go back through some of these, and whatever we can show, we'll do it again. In a more in-depth if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine.
That way we can show them. I don't want to keep talking about graphs when we can't show them to anybody.
Yeah.
This is really, really cool stuff, though, on this one. Do you want to get into hail climatology then?
Yeah, so then after that, then I kind of started doing the worst stuff and doing like a hail climatology. And so with that, you're basically kind of going out and getting more of that ERA 5 or ERA I data sets, and you put it into this model, and you give the WRF model certain parameters to basically say, you want the storm to be convective. And so, the reason why we're basically kind of doing this hail climatology to begin with, I think I said earlier in the show, is basically to avoid population bias. So, as I said, that basically kind of says, here in Norfolk, someone can go out and report and say that there was hail. But if you go down the road, go down 275, down and you see hail, there's no one at that point reporting hail.
Right.
And so it's basically, did the bear shit in the woods or not?
Well, it's great. Yeah, it's crazy because even like South Town could have hail, and west, the northwest side of town wouldn't have it. Is that where you can't,
Yeah. So you're basically kind of just trying to get rid of like the population biases. That's the entire point of this. And so with this, you're saying like, given a certain, like time frame. So like this study was from April, May, and June, and you put this through the model for, those 90 days. And so we basically created these grid boxes. These were 1 by 1 degree grid boxes, and you basically kind of count up and say like, for on average between, for like 3 years, what is the average, hail days that fall in April. And so like you can kind of see how, in these images, you can see, how the storms are changing compared to the type of season. So like in April, it starts down in the southeast. And, here we go in May, it's shifting more towards west, towards Texas, and going up north towards Nebraska. In June, it's kind of, centralized over Nebraska at that point. So then, the entire point then is like, how do you like verify that that it's really hailing? Because then I can go out, and so I can go out and let's say since you're selling like crop insurance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let's say that I were to basically sell this to you, and you buy it from me, and I say, oh, here's this 1 by 1 grid box for this area, and you're charging Farmer John X amount of dollars, and it's it hails on average like 3 days in there, and Farmer Joe down the road, let's say in another couple degrees, it hails more, but you're charging them both the same. But now here you have some sort of like evidence, or at least some sort of like idea that with this model that says given these findings, maybe I should charge Farmer B more for let's say crop insurance than Farmer A.
Right, which makes sense. Are actuaries actually using this?
I don't know about actuaries. I think we did have like one sale, but I don't think it was for like hail. I think we sold it for like wind. I think because when we were doing it, it was they wanted to figure out different plots on like, let's say like an ocean. What is like the return on product, or like what is return on investment for like, let's say, wind turbine on the ocean at point A,
Gotcha.
compared
So
to point B.
wind turbines, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So is there other companies like you out there that do this kind of stuff?
I mean, there might be like insurance people, because I know like insurance, like even the ones here, this one, like Verus has their own
That do these studies.
that not do these studies, but like their truth data sets, I guess is what we would call it, since that's kind of like how you gauge how well the model is doing. So like, like freely available kind of like data would be like the MRMS mesh data. And so like you can go out and basically kind of see, what was like the hail size at a certain time compared to like, like Verus's, where you would have to pay for it, and like their own hail data set that has like a whole different like configuration, like how they measure like how hail had been done.
Gotcha.
And so like that's kind of like how we were comparing like different types of data sets. So like this one was like mesh versus like the Verus Respond, and saying like how far out of whack or how much aligned the models were for these data sets. So like if we were to basically kind of like, let's say now I have this evidence, I have this truth data set. So now the time comes to kind of show you like how reliable is my data set. And so, instead of me just like coming off the road and was like, hey, here's my study that I did for like hail, and here's like the data now that I had to back up. So like I can say like in this 1x1 degree grid box against like a truth data set, I could say the model might be overestimating, like 1 or 2 days, or it's really underestimating 1 or 2 days. Like I even remember just a couple weeks ago, I think BAMS had just put out like it was just like a recent study for severe weather. Like I think over central, like the Midwest, like Nebraska specifically, like they're saying like 1 less thunderstorm per year. And so like like for like farmers, and that's basically like, free water for the crops, and
right,
and that's now moving towards like the southeast. The southeast is getting like 2 more thunderstorms per season compared to like Nebraska. And
so obviously weather patterns are changing.
Yeah, the weather patterns are changing towards it's not really becoming in school you're taught tornado alley is Texas through Nebraska, and really now it's kind of just shifting maybe more towards like the southeast.
I was gonna say it's kind of shifting. We don't get too many around here anymore, do we?
Yeah, I think actually last year, I think Stanton had a couple tornadoes. I think
Yeah.
Northwest Nebraska, I think they had a tornado. I think because even in my time at the National Weather Service, I forgot to even include this. After that tornado event went through, you have to go out, and so like how they determine like the strength of the tornado. So like how do you scale it on a scale from the EF0 to like an EF5? And so like they have a little program on there that goes through and say like, oh, the barn was blown over, and they put it inside a program, and it rates it, and then and at that point you're also kind of tracking the storms, like you're going out there on these roads and this marked vehicle, I think that says survey, and you're kind of trying to figure out like where did it really start, here at point A in like the middle of a cornfield or something like that, and you're tracking it through
the progression.
Yeah. And so you'll occasionally see those like on the National Weather Service sites, on Facebook occasionally. It started at point A, and at this point where they got some sort of data that says it might have been like an EF1 intensity, and sometime down the road is like an EF2 intensity. And so then they're also saying like how long was the storm or how wide was the storm. And so yeah, I got to do that a couple of times for that.
So that can't really be predicted by radar. So
the radar can't like predict, if it's going to be like an EF0 or an EF5.
So that's always an after.
So yeah, that's kind of like an after kind of thing. So like the radar can,
so it's always a potential thing. So like, we're still not to a point where radar is really going to.
So when the National Weather Service like kind of gets like these products, they'll say like there's radar indicated tornado rotation, and
right.
So like when you're looking at that, you're kind of looking for like these. They're called gates, and so you're basically looking for like where 2 different colors. So like the app that I use and what a lot of weather people use, it's called Radar Scope. And so like you look at like the velocity, and so you basically see what the wind is going towards the station and what's going away. And so like if you're seeing like these greens and reds, starting to like curve or hook, you can kind of say that there's rotation there. And so they monitor that area fairly well. And so then they'll put out a tornado warning and say it's like, okay, there's radar indication that there could be a tornado on the ground. But, now that, the radars have been upgraded, I don't know how many years ago, I think maybe at least 10, they're now dual pole. And so like you get like correlation coefficients. And so like you're looking at that stuff. And so basically how like with the correlation coefficient is how uniform is the atmosphere? Is the atmosphere all clear? Is it all rain,
right?
Or do you see debris? And so like you can see like you can technically see tornadoes on the ground with the radar. So like if you get like a low correlation coefficient, you can basically say is like more than likely there is a tornado on the ground here. You can't really say that it's an EF 0
right.
through 5.
So like with these ones that have happened in, like, let's say, like Tennessee and Florida recently in the last 6 months. Florida just had one, I think, a decent sized tornado. And then Tennessee had the one outside of Nashville not that long ago. Are those spots not being looked at as closely as like Tornado Alley? Because I know there was not a lot of warning for those.
It's not so much a lot of warning, when so like SPC, they always put out like a day one risk, and so like even if you were to go on to your internet here and go to like I think it's like spc.outlook.gov or something like that, it'll go and say here's like the day one risk, and so like for like any inside this area, let's say it's like 10% chance of like tornadoes within like 25 miles of this line or something like that. And so, the people down there in Norman, Oklahoma, they'll go and they basically say they are the ones that like Storm Prediction Center, they're the one that put out like the tornado watches, not the
in
national.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. And so they basically put in like a heightened alert for like these stations to be like ready
For the whole nation?
Well, yeah. So like, I mean, you're not getting it like really tornadoes in like let's say Alaska or Hawaii and stuff like that. But like, yeah, they basically say, given this region, you're more than likely have like a chance of like tornadoes or so. And so like with the National Weather Service, usually it's like a team of like 2 to 4 people, but like in like a severe weather event, you can have, you need like 2 or 3 people that are, still doing like daily operations that are not focusing on the storm. And they have like other people that come in that are on rotations and doing the storm work that are actually tracking all these individual storm systems.
Okay.
And so, they're looking at different angles of the atmosphere and seeing if it's actually doing it. And so, they basically go out. And so like, let's say like the weather event that I was working on, they say, I'm going to put out a tornado warning for this area. And so she makes the little program and she highlights the box and say, this polygon is, going to be tornado warned. And then they basically relay that to the emergency managers. And then the emergency managers, I think, basically kick on the sirens and everything like that.
Gotcha. Okay. I didn't realize it was all from one spot.
Yeah. So yeah, they do that all down there. But like, I know like the National Weather Service, they'll put out like a warn, like a message. So like people that are like, spotter trained.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that somebody is stationed at some random point in Norfolk to like kind of like watch the skies. And then that person can call into like the National Weather Service and say, my name is, Chase Calkins. I'm at, this latitude, longitude. I confirm that there is a tornado on the ground. So like, let's say that the radar didn't indicate that there was rotation, but now that I have visual confirmation of it, then you can call in and then they put that out right away. So then that might be, kind of like a short lead time, but more than likely with any type of storm, there's always someone monitoring it.
I guess I don't want to sound bad, but it almost sounds like technology just hasn't caught up with weather yet. A little bit.
Well, I mean, you think about like where it was, like let's say like 50 years ago where, you didn't really kind of like have like
anything. Yeah.
And then now, to the present. And so, I mean, let's say that the tornadoes, what is the first thing that you do like when a tornado siren goes out?
Around here?
Yeah.
I go out and look outside.
Yeah. That is, that is the number one answer that you get. It's like, why are the sirens going off? It's like, because that's bad weather. And it's like, let me go outside and see if there's an actual tornado on the ground. That's not really, the smart thing to do.
No.
Yeah. You're supposed to go into like the basement, stay away from windows.
Right.
That's no fun.
So outside the hail study is really cool. That's the one I could actually kind of read and actually make sense of out of the ones you sent me.
Right. So like even like the images that I have here. So like so there's 2 different images that you guys can't see. There's the model data which is called Hailcast, and so And so, like for this event, it was May 8th of 2017. For those that don't know, this was over Denver, Colorado. It was like a $2.3 billion hail event. And so it basically kind of just like crippled, like the insurance there is like, because they had to pay like all that stuff. And so like if you look at like the hailcast, and so like where Denver's at, it's at, around, 40 north and 105 west. So like if you're looking at like that little cross section there, you're not really seeing hail around there. You might, it's estimating like right now at like a hail size of, 0.5. But then if you go to like the actual real truth data set, you can actually see, that blob over Denver, that's saying, here it is, greater than 1 inch. And I'm assuming, there's a bunch of points on there that's saying that it's greater than 2 inches. I didn't include that image, but like, that's the thing with like these models is that, since it, like in this spot, Denver's kind of right next to the mountain range, the model in like this case, it didn't do very well. And so like that was what kind of like what we were finding is like, the model was doing kind of like poorly against, mountainous regions.
But the model would have predicted this happening.
Well, the MRMS is the truth data set.
Well, truth data set.
Yeah.
So the model didn't predict it at all.
It didn't classify that individual like area as being.
I had them backwards. I'm sorry.
And so, but like if you were to look inside like the grid box overall, if you go inside there, and so like what we would say is that even though that we missed it at like Denver, that grid box still estimated as being like 1 inch. So in theory that, that the model at that point got it correct. It just didn't get like the location as, accurately.
As significant as it was going to be.
And you can downscale these to be even like a finer resolution. It is just, a lot more money to kind of like get more points.
Right.
And then you can, another thing that you can do is you can do nested simulations with these warps. So like this one is basically kind of like over CONUS. So basically all of like North America. So like, let's say like if I wanted to do kind of like a study, you can run like nested simulations. So like a D2 is what it's called, the domain 2. And you run the simulations in. So let's say we wanted to highlight over Colorado. And then you might get like a better feel. So like you would basically take those initial boundary conditions and then you kind of like downscale it to be your initial conditions for like D2, and it does a bunch of calculations, and it gets, so hopefully it gets better. But we didn't get to do any of that because it takes a lot of time and money to kind of do like nested simulations.
Right. Very interesting stuff though.
Super cool.
Do you have any upcoming projects that you want to shout out that we can talk about at another point in time?
I mean, I'm usually always doing some sort of like hail work with Becky.
Yep.
And so I'm assuming we'll be doing the South America hail stuff for.
So still doing that. Yep.
We'll still do that through this year, and probably I'm assuming put out a paper sometime next year.
Any new projects?
New projects. I'm trying to think of my workload this year. I know I'm doing some cloud set stuff with another person. And I know there's supposed to be another company. Another one is, so another model that I use is, it's called CMAC. So it's like a community model. And what we're kind of doing right now is we're trying to get stuff we're evaluating these chemicals. They're called PFAS. So they're per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. That's what the PFAS stands for. And so PFAS has basically kind of been known for like 30 years. A more common term is they're called forever chemicals. So like, let's say your fire retardants, or let's say your nonstick coating sprays, like stuff kind of like that. So like man-made chemicals. And so like they don't break down easily. And so they get into like the water stream. They're, more than likely me, you as well. You more than likely have, these PFAS chemicals inside your body because, I was just saying, you're cooking with them, and it gets inside your bloodstream. There is some sort of like health effects such as like cholesterol. There could be some sort of like low birth weight in women for like their children. I think there was some thyroid issues, and I don't think there was diabetes. I forget it. I was looking at it the other day, but I know there was that study, but we're still kind of waiting on that. Otherwise, there's that study. We don't even know how that's gonna turn out. It was just kind of like a call and kind of like model and seeing how how these PFAS chemicals are in the airway and how it gets into like the waterways.
Once you do that one, I want to get you back on. That one is very interesting to me, actually.
It's definitely different from what we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah.
So
I always wondered what if just different atmospherical things like that, like human made, would cause like that.
Yeah,
outside of emissions.
Assuming I can talk about that one.
There's some you can't talk about. I'm assuming right now that we will get to, but I guess if can't, you can't.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about it. Like they haven't given. It's basically like I've compiled the model, and that's basically as far as we've gotten with it.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we'll move to a little political and kind of wrap up the show for this time, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Otherwise,
do you want to?
I know the other thing that I got here, I'll actually be going into Baltimore at the end of January to the AMS conference, and I'll be presenting, sources for like dust in Texas.
Oh, okay.
And so
I kind of forgot about that one. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip it.
That's fine. I'm sure we could come. Like, there's, I don't know how many different researches, things that I've done.
Dust in Texas.
Yeah. So dust in Texas is, so you're basically kind of like identifying like sources. And so like this one, we were like contracted through like TCQ, and we went through like TCQ has different like subdivisions. And so like we focus on some of like the larger ones like El Paso, Houston, Austin. And the way that we kind of did this and say like, let's say that this point in time is anomalous, is we used this thing called an isolation forest. And so what you're basically kind of doing is you have all these data points together, and you're basically trying to create all these different lines and saying like how many lines can I create before I say like this individual point is anomalous or not. Mm-hmm. And you're basically kind of just like grouping these things into like different boxes as like the easiest terms. And so then you can basically kind of go through there and identify if it's kind of like a localized event, if it's going to be like a regional event, such as like a smoke or a multi-regional event. And so like, so like let's say like a local. So like, let's say that there's some like truck or something like that is idling next to like a sensor or something like that. And it's causing, at that one single point that you got like a high point. And so you got that in there. You got the multi-regional, let's say that this PM 2.5 was, high for the entire state for like a single day. And, on this certain day, which was January 1st, it was, the entire state of Texas was just like out of compliance. And, after, my other person, Archana, she gave this talk and she's like, oh yeah, January 1st, it was, a New Year. So you have all the fireworks and, there's sometimes, that we don't put two and two together. It's like, oh, the fireworks were causing that. And so, maybe that 1 point or so should have been like thrown out. So otherwise you can then, given these points, they have like a species to it. And so you can kind of identify what the species is. Like, is it coming, like I said, from a car? Is it coming from other sort of like emissions?
Was that for like dust storms or just bad atmosphere?
It's just bad atmosphere. So like, let's say, this monitor is saying, at this given time, it's breaking like the 24-hour or 8-hour threshold or something like that.
Is Texas like worse than other places, or is it?
I think they kind of take it more seriously maybe than like other people. Like I know, so like even like El Paso is like a huge one, even with like ozone and stuff like that. I think the ozone might be lowered or something like that. And so like I think they're trying to get like ahead and try to make sure that, where are these emissions coming from?
Trying to figure out where it's all coming from.
Yeah. So like, like another study that I was doing, with the Mexican electrical generating units, we were finding that, the reason why the ozone was so high is because, Mexico had some sort of, like coal plants or natural gas plants, and, the emissions from that was carrying over from the wind and getting over, El Paso. And so, they need to say, the reason why we're breaking this is because, it's not our fault because of like the city, it's, it's coming from somewhere else. So like it kind of like, we get these like wildfire fires from Kansas.
Yep.
You see the hazy skies up here in Norfolk, for days on end.
That's crazy. It's another good one. Because that goes back to almost a little bit of like the regulations. Every area needs to be in a certain like.
Yeah, it needs to be within like a compliance. Otherwise, I think they can get like fined.
But the United States is still one of those. We're still one of the lowest in emissions, aren't we?
I know we've been like trending, like downwards and like trend in emissions.
Because isn't like China and India like the two highest?
I know they produce like a lot. I know like in my master's research, China has this thing called the 5-year plan, and they basically try to say, we are trying to like limit ourselves and say like we want to set like a threshold of like a certain value and not try to like exceed it. So like they're trying to like lower it, but and then it kind of gets into like, are they being truthful in like the reporting? And so that's kind of like where you get like the ground and satellite observations and saying, are these really emissions are being truthful or not?
Right. Can you like? I guess you'd probably have to get paid to do it, but can you see that kind of stuff over there, just from the satellite images, or is that something you have to like have sensors on the ground for?
I mean, that's what like my master's research was. It was using like the OMI sensor and saying, given certain like that one was seeing it weather conditions, how it was playing with sulfur dioxide and stagnant cases. And so you basically see, areas where the wind speed was lower than typical or higher temperatures. You're basically getting that stagnant air, and so it's not being blown out of the area, and so it's just sitting there, and it's just causing, SO2 to, collect over the area for a certain amount of time.
So we can't really tell if they're lying, is what I'm getting at.
I mean, with the sensors, I mean, there's the sensors that say, like what it is, but as far as, that the sensors are stating like a different like unit, but like it's saying like, let's say that they want to only emit like, let's say like 31 teragrams or something like that. You have to basically kind of like do some like backwards modeling through like all these different sensors to kind of see if it's actually being done or not.
Got you. Okay, that makes sense. That's really cool stuff, though. You do some crazy things.
It's kind of funny to think, like we talked earlier about the different businesses and stuff around town, but I don't necessarily always know what kind of remote options there are out there. But this is something that's just kind of cool that somebody in Norfolk's doing all these projects about stuff that affect everyday lives, whether or not we get hail and, all this kind of stuff.
It's cool stuff, man. So yeah, political. We're going to get there. I know you wanted to avoid this. I'll make them fast and easy. Everybody gets these. With an election year coming up, how do you feel about where the state of our country is right now? And do you feel that we are being well represented at the federal and state levels?
I guess
you can answer it any way you want. You don't have to make it elaborate.
I even though you still like prepared me, and I've been talking all this time, and you still don't like really have some sort of like good answer.
No, it doesn't have to be a good answer. Just whatever you're feeling. Doesn't have to be. Nobody's gonna come back at you on this, so they won't.
I mean, the government did kind of technically give us all these different infrastructure. I mean, I know. I mean, even here in like Norfolk, Nebraska, you're talking about like infrastructure. Let's say like roads or some sort of like internet kind of thing. We were just like it took forever to get Benjamin kind of fixed up,
Right.
and so there's always like a need to like fix the infrastructure. So like that's the one thing with like politics. The politics is always about like now. It's never looking into like the future down the line.
Right.
And so it's with the people. It's always like, what can you do for me now? It's not looking out, down the road. And so like when people are always like complaining, let's say gas, oil prices, or that's kind of like a now kind of issue.
Yeah.
They're not thinking of like how far down the line to like really do it, because like everyone's saying it's like, oh, Joe Biden, like open up all the drilling, get all the American oil and just put it into us. Like why buy from other people? And so you try to be just kind of like strategic in like how you plan everything. And so like, more than likely everything just kind of like works out in the end. It's just always like people are just upset in like the now, because like the way that me and you would like kind of like run something, like like with me, it's always you're thinking like down the line,
right?
And so I think like overall, I think maybe Nebraska probably doesn't get like a whole lot pay, because it's the middle of the country. People aren't really thinking that we have still cars or anything like that. We still got like the horse
Indoor
and buggies.
plumbing.
Yeah. And so
we do have running water.
We do. But do you feel like your vote counts?
I think probably not. I would say, because I mean, at least Nebraska, like Omaha and Lincoln, those people are more geared towards Democratic. But then each legislative session, the Republicans lost, and let's figure out how we can get more votes into that and make it more competitive. And so the way that everything should be done, it shouldn't be done through like legislative and say here are the areas that I want it to be in. Like there's different studies where there's mathematical equations that say here is the best representation. So like let's, instead of making like all of like Western Nebraska is it takes up, because there's 3 districts in Nebraska, right? There's District 1, 2.
Yep.
And so like to get like an equal representation, it's basically all of like Western Nebraska basically is making up for District 1 or District 2 and all that stuff. And so like in that kind of instance, it's kind of like hard to do some sort of like equal representation. And so like if it was actually kind of like split evenly to make things more competitive, I think more people would go out. Because I mean, let's say there's more Democratic people in Western Nebraska than what are kind of led to be on. Those people are more than likely not gonna go out and vote and like waste their time, because that county is more heavily towards like a Republican or so. But let's say like closer places like Lincoln, the surrounding areas, making it more competitive and saying, instead of saying like Lincoln can be all Democratic, let's get some sort of district in there where it's nice and equal. That way it's some sort of close race instead of being dominated by one party more than another.
So you're saying in some of those areas, let's say Western Nebraska, you think Democrats aren't voting, and you think in like in Lincoln and Omaha the Republicans maybe are thinking like, hey, I'm gonna lose, why even vote?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're getting at?
That's kind of like my kind of like thinking, like there's that
Well, we can't have people giving up though either,
I know, we always say
everybody's got to get out there and vote.
You always say like every single vote counts.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that the last how many presidential elections, the popular vote has always gone to the Democratic, and but the Republicans have won how many times? But then so like those votes in like let's say California where it's more Democratic, and so like you kind of wonder, it's kind of like the pizza kind of thing. It's like, hey, what do you want to eat? You want to pepperoni, you want a pepperoni, but I want a cheese. Well, I have ruling favor, so it's going to be cheese. And so that's like kind of like my kind of thing. Like I know like why each state gets kind of represented the way they do, but if they really say it's like one nation that wants to be united and say like each and every single person go out and vote, that then at that point, then the popular vote kind of makes a difference. Because I mean, even like in like a local election, the popular person that got the most votes, they win at that level. But as like a federal level, then it kind of goes towards
it goes like the electoral college,
college.
And I still think it's needed, electoral college, because I think you got to make sure you're obviously. There's more people in certain areas. We just talked about that. I don't want to get into too much of that, but I still think that's needed to make sure that there is a fair and balanced election.
But when you do all these like debates and you get all these presidential people that come around, is Joe Biden coming to Norfolk, Nebraska to do anything? Is Trump coming here or anything like that? I mean, he was supposed to go to Sioux City, I think.
The Iowa caucus. Yeah.
And otherwise, really at the federal level, it really only comes down to just a couple of states.
Well, yeah, that's what it is. And the other bad thing is that they know, or they assume the areas they're going to win and they don't need to go there. That's the other thing, which I think kind of sucks. I think they should spend more time and get to a spot where they can get to, within a couple hours of everybody. Even 4 hours, in my opinion. They should go at least to be able to. There should be points in the United States where every candidate can go and be within 4 hours of everybody within a couple years' time. It shouldn't. They're already flying all over the place. Why not?
True.
These bands tour all the time. Why can't these politicians do it? Just my opinion.
Fair question.
So going back to the Democrats, Republicans, do you feel that that's still a working system in today's time?
I think that the way that we now get our information is it's more easily accessible. And so like before, let's say in the 80s and everything like that, you're getting everything through like a newspaper and stuff like this. And so now you have like all these different random programs that say, oh, today Joe Biden did this, or like, let's say on another news channel, like Donald Trump decided to go golfing today. Democrats are mad at this, Republicans are mad at that. It's just always, there's really no pleasing anyone. And so really the representation, I think, at least what the media kind of gives us is kind of throwing everything out of whack at that point.
I would agree. Do you think have you watched much of any of the debates?
No.
They, I haven't liked how they're like, let's say the Republican debates, they're attacking each other and not talking about the issues. Same thing on the Democratic side. They're attacking each other instead of going and talking about the issues. And I think that's where we're kind of losing the, the aesthetic of how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because even you do these debates and it comes down to like the final two. And so like, let's say that Trump wins and then who is the second place, is DeSantis or something like that going to be like the vice president? They just, get along for like the time being, or if it's going to be South Dakota governor or somebody else.
Yeah, well, it's just crazy how they do it though. And then when they're fighting each other, like who actually won the debate? They're just who did the worst comeback against the other person.
But it's even like, you say like all these bad things, but then you're in the office for 4 years and then you try to play buddy with each other. It's like, I didn't just.
They're all friends. Yeah. They're all from the same area. They all live in DC.
The thing
Not
is,
all of them, but
I feel like it's hard to be an informed voter when it is just a blame game, because trying to understand what everybody actually stands for and what they would do, it makes it hard.
Well, that's what these debates should be. It should be the issues.
I know.
Not this guy did this or.
I know. So it makes it hard. You have to do some of your own research outside of it because you're not going to get a whole lot out of it.
Yeah. I'll leave you alone on the politics now. Last thing, where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you enjoying where you are? Do you see yourself staying in Northeast Nebraska?
I mean, like on a personal level, I mean, I would like to get out of Norfolk, Nebraska, go, towards somewhere else. Like I said, like to me, Norfolk, Nebraska is just not
Not your thing?
It's not where I really envision myself. I mean, it's nice that, I can be here with like the grandkid or, with my grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have grandkids yet.
Yeah. Hope not.
But otherwise, like once those people are gone, then like what do I really have in this town? I mean, so like
your job's not here. I mean, I get you.
So like, yeah, so there's nothing really, like holding me here to Norfolk, Nebraska that says, I really, I really like, the car wash down the road, and I really can't, see myself somewhere going to another car wash in another state or something like that.
So where do you envision yourself? Where would you like to be?
Like bigger city.
I mean, the company is based out of Boston. I would like to be out of Boston with all that, but since I have like free reign, I can really go wherever I want. My family is like originally from like Sheridan, Wyoming, and so like I love being in like the nature kind of like area, the mountainous region. Layla is not that kind of person. She's not a nature person. She's more concrete and skyscrapers and all that stuff. So she'd be.
So you guys are like opposites.
Yeah, we're kind of opposites. Like because I like to kind of do like all towards like the nature. Like I go to the mountains. I drive through the mountains, and I'm driving like one of the locals since I was used to it so time, and so I'm weaving in and out. And of course, then she's in the back getting car sick and everything like that, and the kids are in the back saying like, "Dad, you're giving me a headache." I was like, I'm not really feeling anything. You guys should be up here in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So is there? So obviously, this is Wyoming. Is there any other? Like, where do you envision yourself if you could be anywhere? Since you kind of have, with your job, you kind of have a choice. She works from home, you said. Yeah. So once you have no ties here, what are you thinking? Have you given any thought to that? Or?
I really haven't. I mean, like we just built a house, so that's supposed to be like our forever house. She has plans to, of course, expand onto the house. She always has some sort of like project going on. It's like, let's do this. Cause like, I know like she has a greater vision than like what I do. I like to just keep things simple. Like the basement is like unfinished. It's like, in like 5 years or so, we should like really finish the basement. It's like, I don't really need a finished basement. Cause like with the finished basement, it's supposed to be like a 6-bedroom house. Yeah. And it's like, I don't have, 6 kids. I don't know why I would need to even finish it.
Then you could have an office instead of being on the couch.
Yeah. That actually one of the places I think downstairs is actually supposed to be an office. But, I really like my couch. And, I actually have a desk in the garage that, when the place in Omaha closed down, they gave me 2 desks. And, my wife's got one in the one office. And then the other one is still in the garage. And I've had that for like a year and a half now. And I still haven't brought it inside from the garage.
That's funny. So going back to, I'm going to play devil's advocate. So you want to leave Norfolk. What could Norfolk do to get you to stay? What could be, what does Norfolk need to get somebody like you to say, oh, I could really see myself living here?
I mean, as far as like a work from home kind of a guy, I guess some sort of like really better community amenities.
Elaborate a little bit on that.
So like I know like they're trying to make like the softball park, bigger, better. That's not really something that, I see myself in, maybe kids, when they come in for baseball, softball tournaments, having a place for them to change or anything like that. I've heard stories where, people are going out there changing in the cars for between games and all that stuff. But, just some sort of like activities for like the kids, because if I want to do something, there's like the YMCA. Yep. And, thankfully, they built on all that stuff and did all that. The swimming area that definitely needs a different facelift because you know I go in there and it just smells of like chlorine, so you know their ventilation isn't really keeping up with
Right.
the quality of air inside of there. But yeah, I guess you know for like a family kind of standpoint, it's not like I can say like, oh, let's go do something. It's not like I can really say, you know, I don't want to take the kids to the mall or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're on the lines of like, there's not a whole lot of public things to do where you don't have to go and
like not
spend money, or
there's not like family oriented kind of activities to kind of do. I know like like downtown will hold like different events and stuff like that, but at least some sort of like area, multiple areas that say, you know, like let's say Lincoln has like some sort of zoo, Omaha has a zoo. I know.
Well, no, we won't be getting a zoo, but
I know like Norfolk just now they have like the two like gaming areas, and my kids are just always like, oh, let's go to like Kings Alley and go spend money on that. It's like, and you know they blow through like $20, you know, like a couple games,
right.
and it's like, oh, I won this ball. It's like, cool, I got this. I $20 for this little tiny ball from the claw machine.
So what do you as ideas? Is there anything that you can think of in your head? Like, I'm just trying to think, because I mean, you are correct. Outside of the parks, like in wintertime, there's not a whole lot of free activities.
Yeah, because there's the one guy that's doing, you know, the ice hockey, I believe. So that's a nice activity. You know, the skate park has been there for since we were in high school. I don't know how used that really gets.
I'm not sure. I think it does get used, but so I guess I see the along the lines of what you're getting at. I'm just trying to think of maybe that's something we can revisit another time.
Yeah, because when it's just hard for me to say, you know, let's say you're visiting from another town, you know, nobody's saying like, you know, let's make a stop in Norfolk, Nebraska for this attraction or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like for me that really draws me or wants to really keep me inside of Norfolk. Like I know my wife, you know, she has the family, she wants to be around the family, but like for me, at least in my ideology, it just no longer really applies to me.
Right. And that's, you know, it's always a personal choice. You know, I enjoy downtown, but again, it takes money to go to a lot of the things down there.
I mean, because
participate.
I mean, even like the axe throwing. I mean, because it's not like I can really take my kids or something like that and go axe throwing. Can you?
Not yet. Well, I think they had 12. I think it's 12. It's either 10 or 12 because we asked because we were going to take Christian, and he's 11.
I mean, yeah. There's that rage room. I haven't been in there. You know, I would like to go in there and just beat up a whole lot of stuff.
Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying, and the you know, whether people like the Whitewater Rapids thing or not, it is going to be a free access thing. So that'll be a nice little added bonus.
But again, maybe not necessarily for kids.
Yeah. The park will be revamped. Johnson's Park there with it.
Like a trampoline park, and
those are dangerous.
Dangerous.
Blow your knee out real quick.
I did that in basketball, so.
I get what you're saying. I'm trying to not. Obviously, I love living here, so I'm a little biased, I guess. But
everybody finds their thing.
Yeah, but you are right though. There's not a whole lot of outside of restaurants and bars and things. There's not a whole lot of kids' activities that don't cost about the same as going to do that. Again, for all you people, and we're not ragging on any of those businesses because they were needed, but I kind of get where Chase is saying, where we still need to, and that's why he's saying from 06 to now we've only grown about 5,000 people, right? Is that what he said?
Yeah, because I remember I don't know how many years ago when you know, you see the signs as you come and out in town. Like when I was graduating, it was somewhere around like 20,000. I think the signs say like, you know, 25,000 now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I mean, sure, it's grown 5,000 people in like 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess as far as something that would draw me to this town,
Yeah.
it's just.
I wonder with all the housing that's gone up, how much that changes the actual population within Norfolk, though.
It can, but we also talk about with Vance a lot where some of the other community people have left Norfolk to buy houses in Battle Creek or Stanton because it's cheaper.
Then there's also people that aren't commuting into Norfolk anymore because we didn't have housing here that now we do.
Well, yeah. I mean, even still, like, I'll go on Facebook and I'll see people trying to rent houses. Here's this, like 1-bedroom house. Here it's for like $1,300, and I put like laughing things on it. It's like, it shouldn't really cost this much because I mean, like what?
Well,
nothing should cost what it does right now. Not just housing, not just whatever.
Yeah, because I don't know of like really jobs here in Norfolk that is like really high paying jobs, I guess.
There's less than what there is, whatever you want to call it. Whatever the word is. There's a higher proportion of probably lower paying jobs. But there's more industry here than you'd think. You forget about certain things that do pay well. But there probably is a bigger split between whatever you want to call it, the classes or whatever, in Norfolk than there probably is in other cities.
Could be.
I mean, even so, because what, I went to school at Bel Air, and that's 20 some plus years ago, and the community hasn't invested in getting like another school, because I think even like Sunny Meadows used to be a school, and now that's closed down, and that's a medical facility now.
We actually have less schools than we used to because what closed? Northern Hills closed.
Yeah. Because I thought wasn't it a daycare, and then somebody bought it, and then who wanted to convert it to something.
Well, it was supposed to be a Ukrainian refugee daycare, where they were going to run it and have refugees there. That was what I thought they were still opening, but I don't know for sure.
But yeah, so like
I don't know.
when I went to elementary school, like the grade school was kindergarten through 6th grade, and then they built the middle school for 7th grade, junior high 8th and 9th, and then the middle school was 10 through 12. They expanded the high school to accommodate all those extra kids, but now elementary only goes K through 4, and the middle school is 5 and 6. And so,
and that's where we'll probably see some of as long as we can keep them here, that's where we'll see some of the population boom a little bit more, because there are more kids in the schools. But we got to have something to keep them here. Jobs and activities, like you were saying. And I do know that there are other people that are on your side on that, that Norfolk doesn't have enough. They're not for the whitewater thing. They're not for revamping the downtown. They think that there's other things that are needed. And I'm not saying that I'm just a huge proponent of the downtown renovations or that kind of stuff. I like it. I enjoy going down there, but there are people that probably don't, and they don't want their money being put in there, and I get that. But I do think that Norfolk needs to be a place where people do want to come. I wish that things were different and you didn't think that way, but it is what it is.
I mean, yeah,
it's personal choice.
Yeah, when you, I mean, you move away and you spend time in Lincoln, you spend time in Omaha, and you see how easily accessible, those kinds of services are.
Right.
And then you move to somewhere where it's really not. It's kind of like sad, towards like a family standpoint, that you're just like, for me, like when I think about it, it's just like I'm here. It's not. I don't know. It's not somewhere where I envision myself, just constantly wanting to be. Because like, if we wanted to, like, my family likes hockey. I like going to like the Lincoln Stars games. The kids are always asking me, it's like, Dad, let's go down to Lincoln and go to a hockey game. And so it's like, then you're thinking of, taking the entire day off, driving down there, going to the game, and then you're driving back.
As far as kids and let's say like safety and concerns like that, is that a concern to you? Did you feel safe in Lincoln?
I mean,
Or do you feel safer in Norfolk?
I guess there wasn't really much of a difference, I think, for myself, because I mean, since the kids, wherever they're at now, Emery down there in Lincoln, she went to North American Martyrs. It's like these buildings are now secured systems. And so it's not like back in the day where I can just like walk into the building like I used to be able to do in like Bel Air. Bel Air has kind of revamped its entire face. I think, now I like kind of like really think about it. Bel Air is like at least the only one that I really know is like, kind of like expanded like their school, because I think it's expanded at least twice. And I don't really know about
I don't
the
know
other
how
ones.
long ago the West Side did. I don't remember about some of the other ones. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, Bel Air just did their expansion.
Yeah, because they put in a new cafeteria / gym.
Yeah. Yep. Move some of the stuff. Yeah. I just didn't know how you felt as far as just city safety.
Oh,
Bigger city. Obviously, there's gonna be more stuff going on. I guess there's still plenty of stuff that go on in Norfolk too.
Like
but,
we have people in chimneys and stuff here.
yeah, I know. I don't know.
yeah, because in Lincoln, I was in like the northwest part of town, so like you're kind of like sheltered away from like the main area of Lincoln. So
Right.
and so like out there, you're in the middle of like kind of like nowhere, but you're still kind of close enough to town where you can do really whatever you want. I
Yeah.
mean, it's real easy for you just to hop on the interstate and get to wherever you need to go.
Right.
But I mean, out there, we never had, like any issues or anything like that. I mean, there's a handful of issues where,
Well, there's going to be anywhere. I didn't mean it to sound like Norfolk was a safe place. I just didn't know. I just like the smaller community aspect, but
I mean, I can at least, I mean, in Lincoln, since, my friends down there, we'd help each other. But I mean, up here, I now that, I moved back to Norfolk, I don't know anyone. I really don't even really go out of my way to really talk to other people to begin with. But, even with this last snowstorm event, I'm taking out the snowblower. I'm going through the entire, sidewalk because, the guy's got like a little tiny, little push thing that's,
you're
it's not
helping
gonna,
out. Yeah.
it's not going to get through, like a 4-foot drift.
Right.
He's going to be at that, for hours if he got to clear the sidewalk and everything.
Right.
But,
I get it. I'll quit bugging you about Norfolk. I do appreciate you coming on though, making time to be here. We'll probably close it up here, but we'll get you on again if you get some more studies, and maybe we can go in a little more depth and put some graphs up on the screen, and you can discuss it a little more next time.
Yeah,
if you want.
Thanks for sharing your projects. These are pretty cool.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if you want, eventually, come back into like a video kind of thing, I can come back and, basically talk about like all these things that, people didn't get to look at.
Yeah, we can go more in depth if some people want, for sure.
Yeah,
because we should have video hopefully by the end of the month.
Oh,
once the studio's done, yeah. So we can maybe have you back in February or March, talk about a little more in depth, give the people a little bit of time to think about it.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and that there's like community
or even
questions.
this summer, whatever. Yeah, we can do community questions. Yeah,
But otherwise, I even like since I don't even really do like weather forecasting anymore. That's kind of like a thing that I kind of miss. You do weather, and you want to be like the National Weather Service, and I didn't get into a valley to be a meteorologist, and so like I kind of miss like doing the forecasting. And I've always kind of like thought to myself, do I want to create like my own kind of like page, because I think even I didn't like share this earlier, but I think when News Channel Nebraska was originally starting to pan out, I think they were asking for me to come on and be one of the meteorologists for like the TV. But of course, doing broadcast meteorology compared to like forecasting meteorology, you don't. That's like a whole different section down there in like Nebraska where you take specific like broadcasting. So I would have gone into like the job with just like nothing. I not even because like you go up there and you basically just kind of like stand in front of like a blank green screen,
yeah.
and you're looking at
You gotta watch a
TV with
monitor.
your yeah.
Yeah. So you want to like
different.
you want to start a page locally to like
I've kind of like thought about it. Like, I mean, like any random person can go on the internet. I mean, what I basically kind of use, it's a website that's called Pivotal Weather. And what it does is you can look at the entire United States. You can look at, different regions. You can look at more centralized areas like central US, or you can get down to like the local scale. So like if I wanted to just only focus on like Nebraska, but if you want to get down to like the local, they do kind of like ask you to like buy like a subscription package for like a year. It's like $100. Like even like my radar scope, I pay like $10 a year to use that. And if I wanted to get like archive data or get like higher quality, they ask you to do, I think it's like $100 or something like that to get like the next tiered package on that.
well, maybe we can just get you onto Agent Life Media Group and you can be our local weather guy.
Yeah. My mother always like texts me is like, Sioux City, they're forecasting, like 4 to 6 inches. And, I'm going through like the malls and let's say like, the malls are, they're trending towards like, like 8 to 11. And, you get the text back. It's like, yeah, you're real fun to talk to. I'm so glad I asked you, like what your opinion is, like what it's going to snow. And so it's always like, like people hate two people. They hate the lawyers and they hate the meteorologists because, the lawyers are just, they're always going to try to end up, screwing you some way or whatnot. And then there's like the meteorologists where, like, it's going to, they say it's going to like rain today and then it doesn't rain. And then it's like, I wish I can get paid, how many thousands of dollars to just be wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Well, if it's something you're serious about, we can discuss putting you on and you can just do it on our page. As a small little thing, we can pay your subscription, and you can just be our local meteorologist for the Agent Life Media Group.
Yeah, I don't know if there's really any meteorology pages like in Northeast Nebraska. I mean,
I've never looked, but
I know. I mean, I don't even watch like the news channel in Nebraska since I use TV. I use YouTube TV, so you don't get that channel. I mean, it'd be nice to have that one local channel, but since we live in Norfolk, Nebraska, and my wife's family likes the Cowboys, and they're relatively good this year compared to like the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
So I kind of spoofed my location to be in Dallas and in Sioux City and stuff like that.
That works. Well, when I put your episode out, it'll be next week. Maybe I'll put on there and we'll get see if there's any interest in having that. If it's something you really want to do.
Yeah, that's fine. I know. Yeah, snow is. I know. People complain about forecasting with the snow, like where they say it's going to be like 4 to 6. Oh, now it's going to be like 8 to 10, or now it's going to come back down to like 4 to 6, and people are just always complaining. It's like you guys can't really predict the snow, and really with the snow, that one is really actually the hardest one to kind of predict because there's like so many. Small scale things that can basically dry. Is the low pressure going to be in a different area than what it's going to be? Did a dry slot of air come through and basically kind of kill the storm? Like another kind of like weather phenomenon. So like, let's say that you're looking at the radar and the radar is showing that, it's raining in Norfolk right now. Well, I mean, the reason why it's not raining in Norfolk sometimes is because, where the radar stationed at in Valley, Nebraska, the angle that it's looking at it's the lowest tilt that it has is like 0.5 degrees. And by the time that it reaches like Norfolk, Nebraska, the radar is looking at like, I think it's like 6,300 feet above the atmosphere. And so the radar is seeing that it's raining / snowing at 6,000 feet, but it's not reaching the surface. And so like you basically kind of figure out, like why isn't it raining? More than likely the atmosphere is still too dry that it hasn't basically become saturated enough to make it all the way down to the surface.
Makes sense. We'll discuss that, and I'll see if we get some. It's something we can maybe do. If it's something you want to do, be kind of fun.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on. We'll get you on again.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.